What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 304. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. LSV, how goes, sir?
It goes pretty well. I think I started my evening off in not the best note as I was complaining to Marshall about getting cheated in a pickup basketball game. But hey, you know, these things happen.
Yeah, if you play pickup basketball, these things definitely happen.
I mean, I say cheated, but I also don't really care that much, so it's just not worth arguing about. But anyway,
that many times that is the case with basketball.
No, I'm pretty sure we have 3. It's like, no, you guys have 2, but let's move on.
It's such a strategy. Thankfully, that kind of stuff doesn't happen in Magic, where you just say, "I'm at 19."
Yeah, it really doesn't. In Magic, you keep your life total with pen and paper, and yeah, it's not. I'm pretty sure I made that attack 2 turns ago.
No, that was the other game. That's the classic. All right, so we're here for the Battle for Zendikar Rare and Mythic Rare set review. We've already done the commons and uncommons last week, but we still have another important step before we get the complete picture on the set into focus for you, the listener, and to get you ready for all of your release events and such going forward, your drafts, your PTQs and stuff like that. Before we get into that, of course, I want to mention channelfireball.com. They are the sponsor of Limited Resources, and they are a fantastic place to go to pick up everything you need related to Magic the Gathering. That includes singles, booster packs. You can get sealed product in boxes, fat packs, that kind of stuff. And, of course, they have awesome free content as well. You can find all different types of great stuff, from articles to podcasts like this one, for example. You can also find videos of top tier players playing some of the decks that you want to figure out. You can watch some booster draft, and it's all for free over there at Channel Fireball. You also can check out gpctech.com. There's a Grand Prix coming up. It's Legacy. It's in Seattle, Tacoma area, and you can find out information for that. That one's filling up quickly, so if you want to come out and play some Legacy in the GP, you're going to want to get that sorted pretty quickly. And
I would highly recommend you pre-register. I actually did as well a couple weeks ago, just because it's just going to fill up. I mean, the people are going to want to come out and play Legacy, especially there's a ban and restrictor announcement that did shake up the format. So yeah, if you love Legacy, like old cards, I would definitely recommend checking it out.
Yeah, gpctech.com. Also, this show is brought to you by you, the listener. Patreon.com is a website where you can go and you can choose however much money you'd like to give per episode, from 50 cents or whatever, all the way up to whatever you feel is appropriate. It charges you automatically. You can change it any time. There's no commitment. You can up it, down it, turn it off, whatever it is that you want to do. And you get some pretty cool perks for it, and you help support the show. So we do appreciate that. Patreon.com/limited resources. Luis, before we get into the cards, can you go over the grading scale overview for us? We do these in an A, B, C, D, F, and then we also have a sideboard and build around as well.
All right. Yeah, so we're trying not to make things too complicated, even though we do have a lot of categories, but the A through F scale is going to be something that I think you get pretty much if you're familiar with academic grades, at least. I suppose not everywhere. In any case, we're gonna see a higher concentration of A's and F's today than we do in the common and uncommon review, just because that's just how high rarity cards tend to work. A will be your bombs. These are your game winners. These are your cards that are good in all sorts of situations, especially when you're behind. We tend to give higher grades to cards that perform when behind as well as other places, because a lot of cards are good at parity when you're ahead. Your 8-mana 10/10s, it's great on a stalled board, but when you're behind, it doesn't help you at all. So the cards we're looking for in this vein are cards like, a sweeper, like a cheap creature that has like very like abnormally high power and toughness, cards that put multiple tokens into play. Some examples from Origins is Guildleaf Winnower is an A. That's the 4/3 that kills I guess it's kind of a theme here too. An odd a creature with power and toughness that don't line up. Pia and Kiran Nalaar, the 2/2 that makes 2 1/1s. Also Whirler Rogue would have been in this category.
Yep.
Also really efficient cards. Murderous Cut and Fiery Impulse are our go-to A's, even though, as some people have pointed out, we didn't rate those as A's necessarily the first time we saw them. But I think we got on Murderous Cut right away. But Fiery Impulse, that's the kind of card that it was deceptively good. So
yep.
These are your A's. These are the cards you're really happy to open and happy to first pick. There's no A that I would be unhappy to first pick, because that's just how A's work. So Next up are Bs. These are cards that actively pull you towards their color. So a B is a card that if you see third or fourth pick, you're like, well, this color's open. I want to be in this color. These are cards that are, reasonably efficient. They're good in a bunch of different situations, and they have a pretty high power level as well. Suppression Bonds, Acolyte of the Inferno, Reeve Soul, Separatist Void Mage. These are good examples of Bs from Origins. C is playable. The vast majority of limited cards fall into this category. They're cards that you're okay playing, you're not overjoyed, but you're not sad too, and they make up the most of your deck. I mean, if you're really in the right seat, you might have a deck with a lot of Bs, but in general, you're going to be playing at least 10 Cs in your deck, if not more. And these are the cards that just kind of normal Magic cards. Your opponent plays a bunch of Cs, you're not gonna lose, but you're not necessarily gonna win either. They're just fine cards. These are Ring Warden, Owl, Cleric of the Forward Order, and a Crowan Sergeant are some good examples.
Yeah, we expect to see fewer of these in the rares and mythics, right?
Right. Rares just do big, flashy, and or complicated things, which again lend themselves to more A's and B's and also more F's.
That's
because some of them are just these rares that work with very specific cards that you're just not going to get in limited. D are the sometimes playable. I'm pretty sad if I have to run this card. These are mediocre and or junky cards like Volcanic Rambler, Heavy Infantry, just very, very bottom of the barrel cards, but still playable ones, as opposed to Fs, which are just straight up unplayable. These are cards that are super narrow or just super bad. Jace's Sanctum and Tainted Remedy are these like constructed level build arounds that just really aren't playable and limited. Great Aurora is another one. And sometimes you'll find they don't do as many Fs on stats anymore.
Almost never.
Yeah, I think part of it is like they just don't want to make cards that look that bad. At least these bad cards that I just named are interesting. And you can think of a time when they'd be really powerful if you combine them with the right cards. But, examples from older sets abound where you have 5 mana 0/6s that if they block, return to your hand. Like the Zephyr Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a card that Magic shouldn't print, really. I mean, they're just they're bad in a way that's not very interesting. Whereas a lot of Fs that we'll see in modern sets are cards that are interesting but just not good. So those are your Fs. Be prepared for a decent amount of them. We're also going to go pretty fast on the Fs in this limited review. Because once we look at a card and figure out that it's not really something you can assemble in limited, probably going to give it an F and move on. Sideboard cards are another category. Sideboard cards are cards that are usually around B level when you side them in, though sometimes they can even be A level. But they're not cards you'll tend to main deck. Enchantment and artifact removal or classic sideboard cards like Duress or Dispel, which have specific card types they're very, very good against, but just not ones that you can assume your opponent's going to have. And then contextual ones like Yoke Dox, the 1 mana 0/4. Like that was a card I liked having in my deck in some matchups, but it was just too risky to put in your main deck most of the time.
That's right. And so that's our grading review. Why don't we jump right into the cards? We're going to be starting with red for this, as we did for the commons and uncommons. We rotate which color we start with, just to make sure that we're not accidentally biasing anything. And our first one is Akhum Firebird. It's 2 red for a 3/3 Phoenix with flying and haste at Mythic Rare. It attacks each turn of Fable, and it's got landfall, which of course says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. I'm just going to shortcut that for the rest of the show. So landfall, you can pay 4 red. If you do, you return it to the battlefield from the graveyard.
All right. Well, one thing to note about this card is it was the first card that I selected in Battle for Zendikar Draft, which makes me very lucky.
Yeah.
Since Akhum Firebird is just a straight up A. The card is incredibly good. It's also very hard to stop. It puts a lot of pressure on another trick you can use with this card. If you're not the attacking player, you can play it post combat. So
yeah, second main phase it.
You at least get 1 turn of blocks, and the same was true of the landfall. You can also just play your land post combat, landfall into play. It doesn't have to attack that turn. But the fact of the matter is, when you have a 3/3 flying haste, especially as early as turn 4, you tend to be able to take the aggressive reins, or even just have this as your only beatdown card while you sit there and just try to prolong the game. Because if your opponent's forced to trade cards for this, you're happy. You know it's going to come back. Eventually, it will come back, and it's just a great card all around.
Yeah, I gave it an A-. I'm a nitpicker on it, but look, if you're behind a little bit, this isn't necessarily going to save you from that. So I don't have it quite as high as you do. I had it in the B+ to A- range, but it is a threat that is so unrelenting. It has evasion and it hits really hard as a haste flyer as well, that I do think it puts it into the A range. So I gave it an A-. But yeah, I mean, like you said earlier, it's a card that you're willing to first pick and you're quite happy about it. And it puts it into the A range for me as well. Such a great threat.
I think the fact that you can get at least a turn of blocking out of it makes it an A for me, especially there's also cards that sacrifice cards in this set. And, even in a defensive deck, if this is the only aggressive card you play, this can kill your opponent by itself.
Yeah, it absolutely can. In pretty short order, too. Next is Akum Hellkite. So this is a dragon. It's 4 red, so 6 mana for a 4/4 flying dragon at rare. And I will note that that's a little bit below the curve on the old vanilla test there, right? I mean, I think we'd like to see our rare dragon be more like a 5/5, but let's see what it gives us in exchange. It says landfall. It does 1 damage to target creature or player. But here's the thing. If the land is a mountain that you're playing, it does 2 damage instead. That's pretty great.
Yeah, and the way I've evaluated these cards, because there's one for each color, is that you're going to have the big effect, the 2 damage instead of the 1 damage effect, I would say a little more than half the time.
Okay. Yeah, that's reasonable.
Because I think most of the time you have one of these cards in your deck, you're going to bias towards having more of that land type. And when you have these cards, you're going to also for example, if you draw more mountains than swamps in your black-red deck, you're just going to play the 2 mountains and keep the rest in your hand. So you have some control over it as well. So given all that, I think Akum Hellkite is solid. It's a good threat. I would probably put it in the B+ range.
I give it a B+ too. The main reason I did is because it doesn't have amazing stats at 4/4 flyer for 6, though they are acceptable and strong. It's still not one of those ones where you're like, wow, a 6/6 flyer, where it just sort of takes over on its own. And by the time you're casting your 6-drop, your opponent will often be casting their 5, 6, 7 drops as well. And that's where throwing around the 1 damage and the 2 damage doesn't kill those other huge threats. And since this doesn't necessarily match up great against the other huge threats, I didn't put it up into the A range. But I do think it's really good. I would be quite happy to first pick it as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's move on to Barrage Tyrant. 4 and a red for an Eldrazi at rare. It's a 5/3 with Devoid. And you pay 2 and a red and sacrifice another colorless creature to have it deal damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to target creature or player.
Barrage Tyrant is quite strong. It's got decent stats, not great stats, but 5 mana 5/3 is nothing embarrassing, and its ability is very, very good. There are some enough Devoid creatures and colorless creatures, and even Eldrazi Scions, they do 1 damage that Barrage Tyrant is going to have a decent amount of fuel. It's, I think, at best in the black-red Devoid deck. But even in just a normal deck, you're going to have some things for it to chuck. And overall, I mean, it's just hugely threatening. And if it can sneak in a hit in, does 5 damage, it's not that hard for it to clear the path. So I think Barrage Tyrant's an A- just because of how many good things to throw there are in the set.
Yeah, I gave it that too. To me, it was between B+ and A-, but once you start getting extra creatures off of it, it's quite good. Or killing extra creatures off of it, excuse me. It ends up being very, very strong. All right, moving down to Dragon Master Outcast. That's red for a 1/1 human shaman. Now, we usually tell you not to play these, but this one might be different. 1/1s for 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, put a 5/5 dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Full stop. You just get a 5/5 flying dragon for the low cost of having controlled 6 lands on your upkeep.
Yeah, when I said 1/1s for 1 with minor abilities were a trap and limited, I did not mean Dragon Master Outcast.
Yeah, that wasn't the one you were talking about.
So this is secretly not a 1-drop in that you shouldn't really cast this on turn 1 very often, just because the optimal is to just play it the turn you've hit 6 lands, just to give your opponent not only less time to deal with it, less knowledge that they have to. If you don't play, let's say you played this on turn 1 and played a 2 mana 2/2 on turn 2, well, they're going to kill this over that. They're not going to kill the 2 mana 2/2 when they can kill a Dragon Master Outcast.
Exactly.
And it's not like you're attacking with this a bunch either. Any creature stops it. So in general, I would tend to save this. But when you do, the card is amazing. It's a must kill. If your opponent can't kill it, they probably just lose the game on the spot. Right. How are you attacking through a 5/5 red dragon? Much less more. This keeps making them.
It makes them every upkeep.
Yeah. Despite the tiny stats, the ability here is just way too good. So I think Dragon Master Outcast is an A. It's not the kind of card that'll save you by itself, but it really doesn't take much for this to work. And if your opponent finds themselves without removal, they just lose the game. Actually, just to this card. So maybe it actually might save you by itself. Never mind. This card's just a flying army.
It is. I agree. I think it's an A. The upside is huge and the downside is low, but not that low. At least it's a creature, like in your worst case scenario, but all you have to do is hit your land drops. That's all it asks of you. You don't even have to pay mana to get the dragon. It just starts spitting them out. And once you've made your first 5/5 flying dragon for 1 red mana, you're way ahead. And the second one should basically close out the game every single time. So yeah, Dragon Master Outcast is, I think, an A as well. I think the card's just fantastic. Moving down the list, we have Radiant Flames. 2 and a red for a sorcery. It's a rare. It's got Converge, so it deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast it. So just in a nutshell, if you can cast it for 3 colors, you get to do 3 to everything. I think you'll commonly be able to cast it for 2 colors, and in which case you're doing 2 to everything. Let's just assume that you can, get it for 3 the majority of the time. How good is a card like Radiant Flames in Limited if you can do 3 to everything?
If you can reliably do 3 to everything, this card's very good. There are just a lot of boards that this will completely wipe, and especially since you know it's coming, you can both make trades like, double blocking 4/4s with 2/2s because your creatures are going to die anyway, or prioritize just playing creatures with 4 toughness. And you can also modulate this. You can play this for 2 even if you have 3 colors of mana, if you so desire. I mean, assuming you don't have exactly 3 different basic lands, of course. So, I mean, some configurations won't let you play it for 2 small, but in general, you get to choose whether you want to do like 1, 2, or 3. And given that, I mean, I think Radiant Flames is a very solid card. It's in a 2-color deck. It's a lot less exciting just because stopping at 2 does really limit the range of creatures it can kill. So I have this in kind of like the B+ range. I think a lot of the time you're not going to end up playing a 3-color deck, and in a 2-color deck, it's good, but nothing special.
Yeah, I gave it a B. My thinking on it is that we've got an Eldrazi format here where it definitely doesn't answer some of the things that you're going to need to answer. At the same time, we've also got an ally format where this card seems like just the stones, right? I mean, if you have Radiant Flames against the ally curve, you just get to wipe them out. You do get to kill Scions and stuff with it too. So I think it's solid. I think I would take it early, but I don't have it in that upper echelon. I don't think it's amazing. I just think that there's going to be times when it's great and there's going to be times when it's not. And that level of consistency doesn't get you to the A grade for me. Serpentine Spike. 5 red for a sorcery with Devoid. It deals 2 damage to target creature, 3 damage to another target creature, and 4 damage to a third target creature. And any of the creatures that die that were hit by it get exiled instead of go to the graveyard.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Rolling Thunder. It's funny because it's right next to Rolling Thunder if you're looking at the cards alphabetically like we are. This card's going to routinely wipe 3 creatures, and it's it's hard for it to not wipe 3 if your opponent has 3 in play. I mean, sometimes it will do, 2, 3, and 4. Sometimes it'll just kill 2 2/2s and a 3/3 or something like that. But in general, you're going to get 3 or 2 creatures out of this, and more often 3 if you're setting it up. It does cost 7, but you get 7 mana's worth of value out of this for sure.
Yeah, I think damage.
I think this card's an A. This is close enough to a one-sided Wrath that it is what I'm looking for.
I think so too.
This is one of the cards I want to cast on 7 mana.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, these red cards have been insane. I gave Serpentine Spike an A as well. The one thing to keep in mind, of course, is that you do need individual targets for all of these. It's not up to, you actually have to have 3 targets. And that means that occasionally you're going to need to do 2 damage to one of your own creatures, hopefully not killing it to do 4 and 3 to your opponents. Just something to keep in mind.
I mean, I don't think that'll happen very often. Also,
I agree.
Also, it is a processor enabler because it does exile the cards.
Yes, totally. All right, moving down. What's our next rare? Is it Zada?
It is Zada, Hedron Grinder.
What is she
Hedron
do?
Grinder. Zada is 3 and a red for a 3/3 legendary goblin ally. And this is not uncomplicated. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Zada, copy that spell for each other creature you control that the spell could target. Each copy targets a different one of those creatures. Long story short, what she does is when you cast a single target card on Zada, you cast on all your other creatures.
Right.
So she's not good at when you're casting removal spells. So don't shock her, deal 2 to her. and expect it to turn out well. She just retargets it to all your creatures, but she is good when you cast pump spells like Sure Strike, giving, +3/+0 and First Strike. All of a sudden, your whole team gets +3/+0 and First Strike. Or you cast Tandem Tactics, choosing only her because it's, again, you want it to single target, giving her +1/+2 and gaining 2 life, and also doing the same for each of your creatures. So that's kind of a neat little combo.
Yeah, and there's a few different ways you can do that. Now, we have to note here that it's only instant or sorcery spells, right? You can't do it with like an enchantment or something along those lines. So, it does limit the number of things that you actually get to do it with. But, what's your floor scenario here, right? You're playing a hill giant, right? A 4-mana 3/3.
Yeah, 4-mana 3/3 is not too bad. And it's... again, when we talk about a lot of these cards, we talk about fail cases, and the fail case on Zada is that you play a 4-mana 3/3, which also happens to be an ally, by the way. Interesting. And that's the end of the story. Which, you're going to play cards like that. That alone would get you to C.
Mm-hmm.
A goblin ally. Yeah, probably an ally, maybe a C minus.
Sure.
3 in a red for a 3/3 goblin ally with no text would be like a C minus in this set. Zada's upside is not huge. Now that I've gotten to actually draft the set a bunch, it's not like you're going to end up with, 5 pump spells in your deck very often, but it is a real upside. You would definitely choose to have this text on your card. So I would say Zada is like a C+. She's not something I'm going to warp my deck around, but if I have 2 to 3 pump spells, I'm going to put Zada in my deck.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that also goes to when you will take Zada in a draft. I have her at C+ as well, which means, you'll pick her up when it's reasonable, but it's not like you're like, well, I couldn't pass Zada. No, I don't think that's going to be the case with that card. All right, that actually does it for red. Wow, I am super impressed by the rares in red, by the way. We gave a lot of A's out early here. And normally we're pretty stingy with them, but these ones just delivered. I mean, killing 3 of your creatures or, being able to repeat, kill creatures or have just huge stuff is great. All right, let's move on to green. Beastcaller Savant is our first one. It's 1 and a green for a 1/1 elf shaman ally. It's a rare. It's got haste and it taps to add 1 of any color to your mana pool, but you can only spend it to cast creatures.
Yeah, Beastcaller Savant's a card I would always play. I mean, you're going to play enough creatures in your deck that you're going to tap Beastcaller Savant for mana for the majority of your spells, especially if you have Beastcaller Savant in your deck. You're already even inclined to do that. And a 2-mana accelerator that also fixes your colors, again, when it comes to creatures, especially, as an ally, which tends to want a lot of different colors of spells. Mm-hmm. I think Beastcaller Savant's very good. Not like earth-shattering. It's not like Beastcaller Savant is, one of the cards that's going to just completely win you the game, but I think he is a card that I would be happy taking pretty early. I would give him probably a B in this set. He's got some other set-specific things going on. Like I said, he is an ally. There are, lots of decks that want to play 3+ colors. So those things combine to make him maybe a little better than a mana accelerant would be normally.
Now, would you take Beastcaller Savant or a critical ally if you were in the ally deck? Maybe not critical, but like one of the big value allies that pays you off for being.
If it's something like Tadru Warcaller, the 2/1 that gives +2/+2, that's probably going to be better than Beastcaller Savant. That card's a build around that's great, even if you don't build around it, and really one of the reasons to be allies.
Okay.
But Beastcaller Savant, I think, is better than a lot of the normal-ish allies or cards like Snapping Gnarlid, or even some of the removal spells. Some of the like mid-rate removal spells. I would rather have a Beastcaller Savant. I'd rather have Beastcaller Savant than Touch of the Void in most ally decks.
Oh, wow. Okay, I did not have it that... See, I gave Beastcaller Savant a C+. My thinking was that vanilla test-wise, it's pretty weak. It does power out your other creatures, which is really strong. I definitely like that ability a lot. But to me, that puts him in the B- C+ range, as opposed to just being a straight-up B range. But I also would have thought that I would want a Touch of the Void over Beastcaller Savant if given the choice. So that's interesting.
Well, I'm not saying I would do that pick one, pack one. I'm saying if I'm an allies deck that's already like 3 colors. Also, the fact that he has haste is not irrelevant. First of all, because it can fix your mana right away and only essentially costs 1 to cast if you're casting another creature. Also, because if you do have something like a Tadru Warcaller, you can play Beastcaller Savant attack with it.
Yeah, totally. So. No. Yeah, the guy's good. I'm sticking on C+, but I'll keep my eye on him. Oh, God, Luis. I love this next card, man. From Beyond.
Yeah, From Beyond's quite good. It's an enchantment for 3 and a green. It's devoid. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 Eldrazi Sign into play. and you can pay a green and 1 and sacrifice From Beyond to search your library for an Eldrazi card and put it in your hand.
God, I love this card, man. I was a huge Awakening Zone fan back in the day. I even built a constructed deck around it. And when I saw this, it reminded me of it right away, but it's even better. It does cost an extra mana, but it really does reward you by giving you actual win conditions with the Scions. And I was also lucky enough to open this in 2 of the 3 pre-release events that I did. And I ran it in both of the decks too. And I got to say the card is awesome. I loved having it on the battlefield.
I like the Awakening Zone too, but I would rather have a Calzone than an Awakening Zone. Just so we're clear.
All right. Well,
but if we, if I rated cards based on whether I'd rather have a Calzone than one of the cards, there would be not a lot of cards getting
all
A's.
be Fs. But yeah, I think From Beyond is great. The things that occurred to me while I was playing it was that it was a win condition. It basically just told me make the game go longer. It does act as a ramp spell if you do have big Eldrazi that you want to play, because you're of course making Scions that make mana. And then in a pinch, you can sacrifice it to go find a big Eldrazi, or even not a big Eldrazi. There, you can get any Eldrazi card that you want, and you can usually play it the same turn that you sacrifice From Beyond, or you can even just do it on end step. But yeah, what I ended up doing with the card was just generating a whole bunch of Eldrazi Scions if the board was stable, and not sacrificing it, figuring that either From Beyond would win me the game on its own, or I'll just draw the Eldrazi naturally and still have the From Beyond. But then if I felt like the game was slipping away, or that the Scions on their own were not going to be a win condition, then I'd be more aggressive about sacrificing it and going to find some big thing that I could cast and hope to win the game with that.
Yeah, that's generally why I don't play Demonic Tutor Vintage. I figure I'll just draw the card I need.
Because your deck's designed to give you time, right?
No, but I agree with that. I think From Beyond by itself, if it did not have the last part, it would be a fine card that I would basically always play. Mm-hmm. And some decks won't have the last part. Some decks just won't have an Eldrazi to go get. It's not a big deal. This card's just very good by itself. Just generating a 1/1 every turn, a 1 that sacks for mana. I mean, even a deck without a high curve will make use of having extra mana sometimes.
Absolutely.
So I think From Beyond is very good. I don't know if I would give it an A though.
I gave it a B+.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. Just because it is kind of slow. You can't, if your opponent was on the play and curves out, you just can't cast this a lot of the time. But it'll win you any slow games, and it'll slow games down to the point where cards like this are very good, or other cards, a few of other big ramp cards, because this is better in a ramp deck. You'd rather play ramp if you have this.
Totally.
It's also good at the sacrifice deck. If you have,
yep.
This means that for the rest of the game, all your bone splinters are just going to be great.
Exactly. It just fills your board with that. And, even in a bad case scenario where you're a little behind, you play From Beyond, your opponent plays some 5-drop creature, your From Beyond acts as a sort of de facto removal spell as long as the creature doesn't have evasion, because you can just chump block it every turn, with your Scions. And of course, remember, you're still drawing a card, playing lands, playing spells, and it's just churning away like kind of a mini planeswalker in the background, just giving you a little bit of value every turn. Yeah, I give it a B+. I'm a huge fan of the card just from a personal perspective, but I also think it's very strong.
So next up, we've got Green Warden of Marasa. So 4 green for a 5/4 elemental. It's mythic rare.
All right.
When it enters the battlefield, return target card from your graveyard to your hand.
Oh, I like that.
When it dies, you may exile it to do the same. So
Wow.
If this goes through a normal life cycle, if it doesn't get exiled by, one of the many cards that exile, but if this just dies in normal combat or to a normal removal spell, it's 6 mana for a 5/4 that drew you 2 cards from your graveyard.
God.
That is awesome. I mean, 6 mana for a 5/4 is not far behind where you'd want to be.
No.
It's not great, but it's not far behind. And I would play it even if I knew, was going to get exiled and not giving the second card. I mean, 6 mana for a 5/4 that regrowths something. This is the biggest Eternal Witness I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's huge. It's fantastic too. I mean, I can imagine a scenario where you play it, get something relevant back. And I mean that because we're talking about a 6-drop here. So something that you cared about probably died. And then you can start bashing with this. If they can't handle the 5/4, then you're just going to win. And if they can, then they're going to have to trade a couple of creatures or maybe one creature off for it. In which case, you're at even there, and then you get to draw a card again. So now you're just up 2 cards on your opponent. That's ridiculous. Wow, this card just seems great.
Yeah, it's a great card. There's not much that can go wrong when you cast this. Sure, sometimes your opponent's going to get you by exiling it when with one of the removal spells that do that, but you still drew a card. You still 2-for-1 them.
Yeah.
And it's also expensive, which means by the time you cast it, you probably have something decent to get back. It also takes advantage of the fact that sometimes your opponent's going to put cards in your graveyard by processing them. So, I mean, this is natural instinct, but I think most people are already doing this. When you are putting one of their cards from exile into their graveyard, just put the worst card.
Yeah.
So don't give them good targets for Green Warden and Marasa.
Yeah. So how high do we grade the guy though? It's such a card advantage engine. Yeah, I gave it an A-. I mean, it's hard to not put it at an A. The body is kind of, not A worthy, right? But at the same time, geez, it's drawing you extra cards and there's spells, and you can set it up where you trade off something that, you offer a trade that maybe your opponent would be like, why do they want to trade? I guess I'll take it. And then, then you play the Green Warden a couple turns later and they go, oh, that's why. Yeah, I gave it an A-, but whatever. This card's sweet.
Yeah, I'm just going to take this card if I see it.
Yeah. The difference between A and A- isn't really relevant here, I don't think. Because you're just taking it and playing it in every green deck. Niss's Renewal is 5 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for up to 3 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library, and you gain 7 life.
I really want to like this card.
God, I mean, do you?
Every time I've seen this in draft, it's just gone last pick.
It seems terrible.
Well, I mean, I like ramping and I like gaining life, and doing them both together sounds awesome. The problem is ramping from 6 to 9 is not really ramping exactly. and stapling 7 life onto it, I mean, that's great, but I think this card just doesn't do enough of what you want. It's 2 things that do combine well. Life gain to let you cast your big spells. The problem is this is a big spell. You've already gotten to the point where you're casting big spells. So just cast a big spell that does something.
Yeah.
I think this is like a D. I don't think it's straight unplayable because there's some like Ulamog type decks that have like Ulamog Desolation Twin and really do want to get to 10 mana. But in general, you should not be playing this card.
All right. Well, I am going to give Niss's Renewal an F. And my thinking is that if I want to play Ulamog, I'm going to try to...
F for fine or like...
failure. I think if I'm going to play an Ulamog deck, like some crazy huge ramp deck with 9 or 10 drops in it, then I'm really going to lean on Eldrazi's Scion tokens to do it. And I know that, I don't always get to play as many as those as I want, but that's how I'm going to build that deck. And I almost would think I'd prefer to not play those big drops if I have to play Niss's Renewal, just because it's such a blank. Like it only enables these other cards, and there's only a few cards that it realistically enables. I'm not a fan of the Renewal, unfortunately. I get it. It's cute, triple ramp.
The good news about this card? If you're the one who wants this, no one else does, you'll get the card. No one's taking it.
What about Oran Reef Hydra? Is anyone taking that?
I mean, Oran Reef Hydra is 4 in green for a 5/5 Hydra. It's a rare. It's got trample, and this is one of the landfall ones that pays you off for having a forest. It's landfall +1/+1 counter. Mm-hmm. If it's a forest, 2 +1/+1 counters. So
I like it.
It's kind of like an Akum Hellkite, but with slightly better stats and then 2 worse abilities.
Yeah.
Because trample is worse than flying. And pinging for 1 or 2 is a lot better than getting ++1 or +2/+2. Not that those are bad abilities, but this is more of like a B than Hellkite, I think. I
agree.
Because this is just kind of a dork. You cast this card, it's not doing, there's going to be plenty of games where this is not going to do enough different than like a Bastard Gorger that I can't give it a great grade.
Yeah. I think what ends up happening with this card is that, like if I told you, I'll give you a 6/6, 4GG 6/6 trample for 4GG. We would be okay with that card. Like that would be a card that we'd be fine playing and wouldn't hate or anything like that. But
that's a card I would give a B.
Yeah, it's like a B, right? It's inefficient. It's an efficient good beater, but it's nothing to write home about.
I'd probably give that a B- actually. But,
right, and this one gets a B because it can be bigger, right? Like
if this card can be a 9/9.
Yeah, you just wait a couple of turns, play a couple of forests, and it crunches really hard. I mean, I do think this card's quite good. It's just it doesn't quite tick those boxes that get you back from being behind. There will be times where there's going to be just bigger creatures for a little while. This will eventually outgrow them, but I mean, this is the land of Eldrazi. Like sometimes, you play this and then say go, and then they play. What's the uncommon? The 6 mana 6/6 with vigilance, and you can't even attack yet until you hit a land at least. And yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't quite outpace it. I do love trample though. Eldrazi Scions means that chump blocking's a real thing. And Oran Reef Hydra does not care.
What if you cast Oran Reef Hydra, then cast Niss's Renewal? It's immediately an 11/11 and you gain 7 life.
and you gain 7 life. I'm glad you remembered that.
All right, checkmate.
Yeah, I'm on B for Thorn Reef Hydra.
Did you not hear the combo I just said?
By the way, Plated Crusher, which was the uncommon, the 4GGG 7/6 trample hexproof, is like right in that same ballpark, which we also gave a B-ish grade.
Right. I mean, Plated Crusher is probably going to be slightly worse stats over the average course of the game, and it costs 1 more. But if you tap out for Plated Crusher, nothing goes wrong. I mean, there are multiple good common bounce spells which can definitely take Thorn Reef Hydra for a ride, whereas Plated Crusher, it doesn't care.
Right. Next is Undergrowth Champion. He's 1 GG for a 2/2 elemental. And it says, if damage would be dealt to Undergrowth Champion... Oh, by the way, he's a mythic rare, so you know something's going on here. If damage would be dealt to him while it has a +1/+1 counter on it, remove a +1/+1 counter and prevent that damage. All right. Then it's also got Landfall. Put a +1/+1 counter on it.
So,
damn.
Funny thing about this card is Owen put it on one of his top 5 most underrated cards in the set. And a lot of people in the comments took umbrage to that because they're like, Undergrowth Champion's like $20. People love this card. How's it underrated? I think it's both underrated and overrated at like the same time somehow, where people are going nuts for the card, but also people are not really putting it in deck lists and talking about it as much. Right. So Owen's saying it's better than you think, but maybe, maybe the like somewhere in between like the hype and what's being said. I don't know. It's kind of funny that like there's this mix of, where's this card being rated? Of course, that's for constructed.
Sure.
For limited, the card's fantastic.
It looks great.
It's a 3-mana 2/2 that's going to almost immediately grow to a 3/3. It's really hard to kill with damage. I mean, it's funny because when they chump block it, it gets smaller, which is not true of normal creatures. But when you have, this is like a 4/4, like what are they going to do? They can't throw a 4/4 in the way.
Yeah, and because it still does its damage, right? It just has
still
damage
does its normal
damage.
First strikers can kind of get this a little bit. Like if this is a 3/3 and gets blocked by a 3/3 first strike, then the counter gets removed from this, and then it deals 2 back. So don't attack your Undergrowth Champion into a 3/3 first strike if you.
Now your champion still doesn't die in that.
No, your champion doesn't die.
Okay, yeah,
but you just lose a counter for.
But you do lose a counter for your troubles. Yeah. No, this guy just seems great. It's only like you said, it's effectively always going to be a 3/3 by the time it enters. By the time you're going to attack with it, and it will very frequently pick up 2 to 3 more counters in an average game of limited, assuming that you've cast it on the 3rd turn of the game, which is not super difficult if you're 2 colors. And the thing's just a huge pain to deal with. I mean, we were talking about constructed with Owen and stuff, where there are numerous spells that will just kill it, black removal spells and such. But in limited, it's a lot more about creature combat. And Undergrowth Champion he's the champion of creature combat. It just seems really difficult to tussle with.
Yeah, Undergrowth Champion completely disregards most removal spells, is very good in combat. You also are not forced to run this in until it gets big enough, and it comes out quickly enough that it gets tons of bonuses off landfall. Like one of the problems you have with 6-mana landfall cards is by the time you play them, you don't have tons of lands in your hand. Undergrowth Champion, you play as turn 3 or often on turn 4 even, so you can immediately play a land and make it safe. But I think Undergrowth Champion, I think it's an A, probably just an A-.
It's like an A- for it because of just raw efficiency, right?
Right. It's just this is like one of the cards that it can come out early enough and have a huge impact on the game at that point because it's so cheap. Even though, yes, it doesn't have the raw power of like one of some of these 6 and 7 mana rares that we see that when you draw them off the top on turn 9, you're like, this is the best card in my deck. Yeah. Whereas Undergrowth Champion, when you have 7 mana, I could imagine plenty of commons being better than this card. But when this is the card that when it's in your opening hand, sometimes you're just going to run away with the game.
Yeah, think of like Vampire Nighthawk, right? Like it's so efficient. I
don't want to think of Vampire Nighthawk.
Okay, you don't have to. It was a suggestion. Yeah, Undergrowth Champion A-. Super. Man, that card is such a pain. I actually am kind of afraid to face that thing down now.
Well, you won't have to very often. It is a mythic rare.
It is a mythic, true. Woodland Wanderer is our last green one. It's a rare. It's a 3 and a green for an elemental. It's a 2/2. But it's got vigilance and trample, which probably looks trample? Weird. Yeah.
I don't understand.
That's actually back-to-back sets that we've had a 2/2 trample for 3 and a green. But it's got converge.
Oh. Okay.
There you go. And when it enters the battlefield, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each color of mana spent to cast it. Now, the important part to note here, right, is that it's already got a base power and toughness of 2/2, and you're getting counters on top of that. So you pay the green, That's a color, and then you can pay up to 3 more if you have access to that kind of thing. And this thing can be, what is that, a 6/6 trample vigilance for 4 mana? What the heck?
Woodland Wanderer is very good because in a normal 2-color deck, it's still 4 mana for a 4/4 vigilance trample, which is a card I would always play.
Yeah,
and it's not hard to get to 3 or even 4 colors in this set, even if you're not trying. So the first deck I had Woodland Wanderer in was actually this green-white deck that just happened to have a Lifespring Druid and one more source, like a random dual land that could get to 4 colors. So
wow.
It was frequently a 4/4. That was the most often case. But, I played it as a 5/5 a couple times, and that was obviously fantastic. And this is without me really trying to enable it. Whereas I've seen this in decks that are just straight up, 3+ colors, and it's just always a 5/5, sometimes a 6/6. So it's the kind of card which I would take early and try to enable a little bit, take late even if I knew I couldn't fully enable it, and be happy pretty much either way. It is ultimately just a big creature with power and toughness, but it's cheap enough that you're not feeling too bad if this gets removed.
Yeah, and I love the Vigilance and Trample combination here, because Vigilance, if it's big enough, means that you get to attack and not be attacked back, and Trample means that you're applying real pressure right now because they can't say, okay, well, I'll chump block with a couple of things and then try to set up a bigger board that can actually block this. You're just crunching in for a whole bunch of damage every time with Woodland Wanderer. This card's just super efficient and seems awesome to me. I don't know, do you have it in the A range or do you have it in the B+ range? It is really hyper efficient. I mean, your worst case is it's a 3/3 Vigilance Trample for 4 mana, right?
Well, realistically, the worst case is a 4/4.
What are
you stuck on 4 forests?
Right.
You technically, yes.
I was saying literal worst case is that. That never happens. Yeah.
It is unlikely. I think this is probably an A- just because it's just a 4/4/5/5 for 4 mana with 2 good abilities. I mean, that's got to be good enough.
Yeah, how can we not give that an A-? I agree. Again, for similar reasons to Undergrowth Champion, it's just pure efficiency. That's it for green. Those rares were good. I kind of like where this is going. They haven't been, at least so far, the overwhelming, dominant, I can never beat it rares, but they've been okay, I need an answer for that pretty quickly type rares that come down a little bit cheaper. I think that's kind of neat.
It's kind of funny that green actually has a bunch of rares that are kind of just big power and toughness. Between Undergrowth Champion, Woodland Wanderer, and then the Oran Reef Hydra, you have 3 rares or mythics that are at their core just big creatures. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, that is very green feeling, but it's kind of interesting that green is just getting not these outlandish effects. These are just commons and uncommons, but better because they have better stats.
I love that. I love seeing that design aesthetic for green. I think that's where there should be. All right, white. Our first white card is called Emeria Shepherd. It's a 5 white for a 4/4 flying angel at rare. And she's got landfall. You may return target non-land permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So you're regrowing a card, but this is part of that cycle that you've been hitting on, Luis, where if it's a plains, you get to return it to the battlefield instead of your hand. It just goes right into play.
This card is quite strong. This is the landfall payoff for plains where, unlike the other ones we saw, this is 1 more mana and even slightly smaller, but you're drawing a card when you play a land, and better yet, you're drawing a good card because it's out of your graveyard that, it's a non-land permanent. It's not like you're drawing a random land. And if you play a plains, it goes right into play. So it's like you drew a Black Lotus to cast it. Right. So Emeria Shepherd is one of the kind of unstoppable late game engines that if you can play this and get it going, you're just going to win the game flat out.
Now, how do you feel though about the fact that she costs 7 for a 4/4 with flying, which, as we know, does not pass the vanilla test. But I think going beyond that, my real concern here is that Emeria Shepherd gets killed before I even get my first landfall trigger, because I'm assuming I don't want to wait all the way till turn 8 to play this, or at least there's going to be times when I can't. And by the way, I don't mean turn 8, but I mean by the time I get to 8 mana.
Yeah, so my preference when I have this card is to play this, then immediately play a plains. Any land, obviously, but a plains.
That is the preference.
Actually, my preference is to play Evolving Wilds, then sacrifice to get a plains. But some games you're going to be able to do that, especially at one of the hyper combos I like is turn 5 Kozilek's Channeler.
Yeah.
4/4 that taps for 2 colorless. Turn 6 cast Emeria Shepherd, play a plains.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Yeah, that's game.
I actually, one of the people in our draft last night pulled that off, and it was like, yeah,
Wow.
that is pretty good.
And that is not, I mean, assuming you have the Amiria Shepherd, you've picked one up, that is not that ridiculous to set that up. See, because
really
if I can do that, then I think this card is absolutely top tier, because I'm getting my value. And even if they use a removal spell to kill the shepherd at that point, I can live with that. The thing that I'm more afraid of here, and the reason why I brought it up, is the other scenario where I'm like, well, I got to run it out there. So here's my Amiria Shepherd, and then they kill it. And man, I've spent 7 mana and kind of crafted my game around this thing, and I didn't get the payoff, right? That's like, how often do you see one of those happening versus the other?
I think that it's a high-end enough card that you can just put this in a random deck. It is powerful enough that I would just put it in a random deck, but you do have to do a little work for this. This isn't just like a card that I expect to be fantastic in every single deck. It is a ramp payoff, but it's one of the better ones. I mean,
it does seem great.
I think I have to give this an A just because, or probably an A minus.
I was going to go A minus, yeah.
Just because it's one of the, when you think of like unstoppable late game ramp engines, this is the exact kind of card you want.
Yeah, I was going to say A minus. After you described a scenario of, not having anything crazy happen, but be able to get like really good value out of Amiria Shepherd, I'm on board with A minus. That card just seems great. It's exactly what I want to do. Man, this next one's really good too. What about Felidar Sovereign, who's back from reprints?
So Felidar Sovereign is 4 white for a 4/6 cat beast at rare. So one of the biggest cats I've ever seen. Has vigilance and lifelink.
Antlers, by the way.
Yes, of course. It has vigilance and lifelink, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 40 or more life, you win the game. That part is kind of like flavor text.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Just because if you have 40 life and this in play, you're probably going to win the game anyway. But I mean, this is a 6 mana 4/6 vigilance lifelink. If they can't deal with this, they're probably going to lose, and it's pretty hard to deal with this.
Yeah, who the heck can deal with this thing, right? And the fact that you get to start crashing in with it, it's great in combat with 6 toughness, but still having 4 power means it's often going to kill 1 to 2 of the things that are blocked, or that blocked it, and then it gets to sit back and block as well. So it's basically just unraceable because it has lifelink. This card's just sweet.
Yeah, it is. It is. Just, I don't know, a classic, white rare. This is what you think of. This is the Baneslayer Angel of this set, right? It's a 4/6 vigilance lifelink. It's just giant vigilance and lifelink. I guess it's not a giant; it's a cat beast. But it just plays offense and defense. It's impossible to race. It is vulnerable to removal, but at 4/6, there's not that much removal.
Yeah, even what is it called? Demon's Grasp.
Demon's Grasp is -5.
Doesn't kill it. Yeah, it's funny. I think Felidar Sovereign's an A. The reason that I'd give it an A here is because it does exactly what I want, which is if I'm behind and I play Felidar Sovereign and they don't kill it immediately, and like you said, it's hard to do that. I am not behind anymore. Yeah. There's so few board states that can attack into a Felidar Sovereign and still kill you. Even if you're at, 2 or 3 life, they have to get in so much extra damage and they're losing their creature in the process.
Yeah, I think Felidar Sovereign is the classic example of an A. It's not like, it's not like an A+. It's not one of the best cards in the set, but it's clearly a card you'd be happy to first pick.
God, it's up there on their list for me. That coming from behind thing is so big.
Speaking of the best cards in the set, Gideon, ally of Zendikar, is 2 white for a Planeswalker, 4 loyalty, has +1. Gideon becomes a 5/5 human soldier ally with indestructible and prevents all damage that will be dealt to him. So, 5/5 attacker, 0 mana, or 0 loyalty rather, put a 2/2 white knight ally into play. And -4, you get an emblem with creatures you control get +1/+1. I mean, Gideon's a card. Like,
card's ridiculous.
So what the normal play pattern is for Gideon is play it, make a 2/2. I mean, that's I think going to be the majority of the times you play this.
Yeah, because we have to remember, of course, that Gideon doesn't have haste, so you can make him into a 5/5 human soldier to get his loyalty to 5, but he won't be able to attack that turn.
But if your opponent can attack Gideon effectively, sometimes you'll want to just play Gideon and -4 him. How much, would you play a card an enchantment that was 2 white, all your creatures get +1/+1?
Yeah, it's close enough. I mean, I prefer it to be 3, maybe, but whatever. That's a card.
Yeah, I mean, but you would play that card. Yeah. And it would actually be a card you would pick highly because it's just such a good effect over the course of the game. Gideon is basically strictly better than that in multiple ways. One of which is, once you make the emblem, your opponent can't get rid of it. We don't have a card yet that deals with emblems. So you play Gideon and all your creatures for the rest of the game are +1/+1. You know, that is awesome.
Yep.
Also, a Planeswalker with 4 loyalty that makes a knight every turn that triggers all your ally stuff. That's also awesome.
That's just
and
crazy.
Gideon can march over and smack them if you've got nothing better going on, and it's a 5/5 at that point, which also sets it up to give you the emblem without dying.
Yeah, indestructible 5/5 as well. Ugh.
Oh, I think Gideon's an A+, just one of the best cards in the set. There's very few positions where Gideon's not going to be good enough. I mean, he makes creatures to defend you and himself. He makes all your creatures better. Yeah. He's a threat by himself. It's also very cheap. It's only 4 mana. Sometimes you're just going to be on the play and play Gideon. Your opponent's going to be like, well, can never win this game.
Yeah, I agree. Normally I would give a card like Gideon an A because of the fact that it does not, do an amazing job of getting you from being behind. But the fact that Gideon only costs 4 mana means that you're just so rarely going to find yourself in like a very behind situation, when Gideon becomes relevant and he just so dominates every other board state that I think he is an A+. That card is insane. I have 2 of them already, by the way. Rags. Hero of Gomafada.
So a 4 and a white for a 4/3 rare. It's a human knight ally, and it has Rally, which is whenever you play hero or another ally, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn.
How good is that? Remember, so, the key here to consider is that that's basically only happening on your turn.
It's pretty good. I mean, you're going to want to play this in a deck that has interest in attacking. And, a ramp deck that's trying to get, like, for example, a Maria Shepherd going, not as likely to want Hero of Gomafada just because it's not attacking until it's going to win the game. And this helps you. I mean, where this is good is when you get to attack your 3/3s into their 3/3s or your 4/4s into their board of 2/2s and they can't block and kill your creatures. So you have to care about attacking. Or better yet, your army of 2/2s into their 3/3s just to get damage through.
Right.
So if that's, limiting it to some degree, but it's a very powerful effect. And if you follow this up with another ally, then all of a sudden you have a 4/3 indestructible attacking them next turn. That's quite good.
Yeah.
I think Hero's a very good card in an aggressive deck, which the ally decks tend towards. Ally decks tend to want to attack. They have all these great attack triggers and very little to do on your opponent's turn. So in general, Hero is exactly what the ally deck is looking for. I think it's a B+. It's not anything spectacular in the ramp decks, and in a normal mid-range deck, it's just a fine card. In an ally deck, of course, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I gave it B+ as well, and you touched on this, but remember that you don't have to be an ally deck to take advantage of Hero of Gomafada. You can just play it, and it will still affect you.
Right, and there are a lot of kind of random creatures or allies in this set, so you could have this as your only card with Rally, but still have 4 or 5 allies.
Yeah, totally. Next is another ally. This is Lantern Scout, which is 2 and a white for a 3/2 human scout ally. With Rally, your creatures get lifelink.
This card is great. It's one of the cards I'm actually kind of excited for Constructed too. It's a card that when you play this, you're not going to need very many attacks before your opponent kind of has to give up on racing you.
Yep.
Like if you can play this and get a hit in and gain 6 life, all of a sudden your opponent's going to be very much on the defensive because you gain 6 and Lantern Scout's in play, which kind of has the promise of future life gain.
Right. Now the card just seems great. Also, looking at it from vanilla test standpoint, it's a 3/2 for 3, which is acceptable. All upside from there. The card, to me, this card is like a B. It might be a B+, if you're in an actual ally deck. I don't know. I have to play with it. I haven't played with her against it yet. But I guess I'll give it a B.
Yeah, I think it's a B+ just because of how much it can swing a race.
Yeah, you can gain huge amounts of life. Next is Planar Outburst. It's 3 white for a sorcery at rare. It says destroy all non-land creatures, and it's got Awaken 4 for 5 white. So if you pay 5 white, you destroy all non-land creatures, and you get a 4/4. One of your lands gets 4+1/+1 counters, and it's a elemental with haste. This is super interesting for limited, isn't it?
Well, interesting insofar as it's just an excellent card.
It is, but here's the thing. I'm assuming that in Constructed, you're going to be playing this for destroy all non-land creatures and then occasionally you'll awaken. But basically it's going to destroy all the creatures. But in Limited, you have a pretty high chance of actually having land creatures on the battlefield across from you in many different archetypes where this actually just doesn't kill everything.
Yes, but First of all, if your opponent doesn't know this is coming, you have the normal stuff you can do to set up your wrath, which is not, play the minimum number of creatures and do your best to make your opponent overextend. But you can also do things like make unfavorable trades to kill their awakened creatures, so that your planar outburst wipes everything else.
Yeah, but it makes you do that, which is kind of interesting, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is interesting how this is going to play out, but the card is just amazingly good.
It's still very good.
It's great at 5 mana. It's incredible at 8 mana.
Yeah.
So I mean, this card's an A+. It's great when you're behind. It's a good card at parity because you can start stockpiling creatures and get a huge advantage out of it. And when you're ahead, you just don't need to cast it.
I agree. Yeah, it's just fantastic. It also deals with some of the threats that are very difficult to deal with. Planar Outburst A+. I'm curious what you think of this next one. I know it's good. I don't know how good it is. Quarantine Field is white XX to cast. And yes, it's an enchantment. Very weird mana cost for an enchantment. It enters the battlefield with X isolation counters on it. And when it enters the battlefield, for each isolation counter on it, exile up to one target non-land permanent an opponent controls until this thing goes away. So what we're looking at here as far as play pattern is 4 mana, exile something. It's any non-land permanent, by the way. 6 mana, exile 2 somethings, 8 mana, etc.
So
seems amazing.
White just got a bunch of incredible cards. I mean, Quarantine Field is, I think most often you're going to cast this at 6 mana, just because that's just a normal mana cost you can get to. But it's still fine to cast at 4. Exile is one thing. And at 8 mana, it starts getting absurd. Also, this is limited where there's just not a ton of enchantment removal floating around in people's main decks. Quarantine Field's just another A+. White just gets 3 in a row somehow.
That is unbelievable, right?
But you can't give them any other grades. I mean, this card's just incredible. For 6 mana, killing your opponent's 2 best non-land permanents. I mean, you could even set up processors with this card. Not that you need to do anything like that to make it.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But hey, you might as well mention it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I have to agree. And on top of all that crazy upside, you get a very reasonable floor of 4 mana to exile a permanent. I mean, that's just like we would play that would be a high pick in and of its own, right? If it was white 2, Oblivion Ring anything outside of a land, we would be all over that card. Wow.
Yeah.
That's just insane.
The fact that this is a modal spell where you're happy with any of the X can be any number except 0. I mean, I guess you could cast this for X equals 0, but don't do that. And you'll be very happy. I mean, casting it for X equals 1 is great. Casting it for X equals 2 is very good. Casting it for X equals 3+ is kind of running up the score.
Wow. Yeah, insane. So that actually does it for white, but they had some absurdly good readers
white,
here.
It's just funny, like that. It just, I mean, color balance is just going to shift from set to set. It's just, and the rares and mythics don't drastically impact which colors you should be drafting. It's funny that when you're drafting white, a lot of times it's just because you open one of these cards that you have to take.
And that you're going to be highly incentivized to stick to. We'll also note that the 3 that we named there all have double white, right?
Yeah,
so they're incentivizing you to really stick with
2 of them are mythic, so again, they're not going to show up all the time, but the fact that white gets 3 of like the top 5 cards in the set is pretty incredible.
Wow, that is insane. All right, let's move on to blue. There's some really cool rares here in blue. Maybe not quite on that same power level, but still very strong. Our first one is Drowner of Hope. It's 5 and a blue for an Eldrazi. It's got Devoid. It's a 5/5. And when it enters the battlefield, you get 2 1/1 colorless Eldrazi. So just right, it does have an extra ability, but just right there, you're paying 6 mana for 7 power and toughness over 3 creatures, including a big fat 5/5. And you can sacrifice an Eldrazi Scion to tap a creature.
Drowner Hope is very good.
Yeah, that card's great.
A 6 mana 5/5 that came, if it was a 6 mana 5/5 that came with two one-shot tap a creatures, like if it just had 2, 0 mana activation tap a creatures, that'd be very good. I would always play that card. Yeah. And this is just much better than that, because not only can the Eldrazi Scions, attack and block and be sacked for mana, this also combos with other Eldrazi Scions. So if you have a way to make more Scions, the Drowner of Hope just, keeps on tapping your opponent's creatures.
That's great. I just think this card's really, really solid. I think this is the kind of card that you're happy to first pick. Does it reach A- status? Yeah, I actually think it does. it isn't one of those over-the-top cards, but I really appreciate that it gives you 3 bodies for, again, I know I harp on this, but it's really important, is when you're behind a bit on board and you finally hit that 6th man and you go, boom, drown or afloat, make a 5/5 and 2 1/1s, the chances that you survive that next turn are way, way higher than if you're just playing some one solitary big dumb creature or whatever. So I'm actually going to give Drowner an A-.
I'm going to go with A. It's a 6 mana 5/5 that comes with 2 1/1, so 7 points of stats. It's got the 1/1s have good abilities. This has a useful ability.
Yeah,
and it's also easy to splash. It's just not very committal.
That is true.
I can end up playing this a lot more often than I can a double colored card.
Yeah, Drowner's just great. Exert Influence is next. It's 4 and a blue for a sorcery. It's got Converge. So it says gain control of target creature. What? If its power is less than or equal to the number of colors of mana spent to cast it. All right. So once again, we're walking down the road of the mind control at Rare variant, and they're kind of pushing it around, pushing different levers and knobs here to try to figure out where it can actually be safe. Do you think that they've hit a reasonable zone here with
this is definitely not mind control. I mean, you have to do some work, and you can't take their 7/7s basically under any circumstances. You have to shrink their creatures first or whatever.
Right.
But that being said, this is still just gain control of a creature, which is a huge swing. That's much more than removing a creature. That's removing a creature, adding a creature to your board. So you end up generally up on cards and mana.
Yeah, built in 2-for-1 right there.
It's also a card that I think is good, even if you can only do it for 2 colors. Taking a 2-power creature is still very good.
Yeah, that is fine.
If you steal a 2/3 with this, then you came out ahead.
It's true.
You spent 5 mana to deal with their 2 to 3 mana play. That's probably going to trade for another 2 to 3 mana play. It's a 2-for-1 that's pretty even on mana and overall is just very powerful. And
that's your basement.
And that's your basement. Again, for Converge cards, 2 I'm saying is the basement because it's really hard to just do 1.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to do 3 or 4 on this. 5 is maybe ambitious, but getting to 3 or even 4 is not that difficult. Imagine you were a red-blue deck and you open this in pack 3. It's not going to be unreasonable to just have 2 sources of a third color in your deck.
Yeah. Now that said, there's a wide variety of threats that are very important that this just doesn't deal with. It does have some pretty high setup cost, like you said, I agree that while the basement isn't that bad, I don't know that makes it a great card, right? It's kind of cool that it's a sorcery, by the way, and not an enchantment, right? So that if you do get to pull this off, it's just yours now.
Yeah,
what is it
the only thing that owns this is a bounce spell.
Right.
I'll take it back, but disenchants don't work, which we're a vulnerability of mind control.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think I'd rather have that vulnerability than the bounce spell one because there's a few of those floating around in the format.
Yeah, well, bounce spells also work on mind control, so you're not.
Good
really,
point.
It's not
Good
really
point.
a trade-off.
True.
I think this is better than a B. I think this is probably a B plus to an A minus. I'm going to give it a B plus, but I'm going to say that if you're in the Converge deck, this is just an A. If you're reliably going to get to 3 to 4 different colors to cast this, it's an A. And if you can reliably get to 4 to 5, it's close to an A plus because it's going to steal a 5 or a 6 drop.
Yeah, which is just insane.
So I think if you see this pick 1, pack 1, it's closer to a B plus just because you're not necessarily going to be able to end up in a deck that can, that can utilize it. If you're in the scenario I mentioned earlier where you're 2 colors, solid 2 colors going into pack 3, it's just probably closer to just a normal B. And if you're in the Converge deck, if you're already the 5-color green deck, then this card is one that you shouldn't be passing.
Yeah, I gave it a B, just as a kind of average it out or whatever. But yeah, there's certainly decks that it's going to be higher than a B in. Guardian of Tazim, what does this guy do?
It destroys your opponent handily. It's 3 blue for a 4/5 flying. So I'm already in. The rest of the text has to be something heinously bad for this not to already get a good grade. And the rest of the text is landfall. Tap a creature an opponent controls. If that land was an island, it doesn't untap on the next one. Yeah, so Guardian of Tazim
on a 5-mana spell. Wow.
It's a 5-mana 4/5, which is already, again, great. And if you have a stream of islands, you just lock down your opponent's best creature.
And you're flying over and just crushing them for 4 in the air.
Yeah, Guardian of Tazim, just an A.
Yeah, it's
no
just
bones
straight
about
up A.
it.
It's a great card. Yeah, that's very efficient too. The reason that it gets an A is because of its combination of efficiency and power level, not one or the other. Really impressive card. Would play. Let's see what's next here.
Well, it's one of the keys to crushing the pre-release, I think.
Part the Water Veil.
It's one of the cards that
I know you have your eye on this thing.
I am attracted to in terms of
6 blue. Value. That's what got you.
Right. This is 4 blue for a sorcery that says take an extra turn after this one. Exile Part the Water Veil. That alone not good enough to play. You would just not put that card in your deck. But it has Awaken 6 for 6 blue. So for 9 mana, you get a 6/6, then take an extra turn. That's very, very good. This is an actually good 9 mana play. Because you get a 6/6, then a turn to smash with it. And if you have 10 mana, you can attack with 6/6 right away, then take another turn and attack with it again. So tell me, why is this card not incredible?
I like it that you feel the need to defend why a 9 mana play would be good, right?
Well, to be fair, it's not insane at 9 mana, just good.
It's just good.
And it's not great at 6. But besides that, Part the Water Veil is incredible.
It's super sweet besides that, yeah. No, so basically, the deal with Part the Water Veil is, like, the question I have is, how good are Time Warps and Limited, right? Like, would we play 4 blue, take an extra turn after this one at sorcery speed? It's okay,
no.
right?
I mean, you wouldn't play that card. So the problem is, even though it's an appealing effect, it's on one of the most powerful iconic cards of the game, Time Walk. You have to be in a position where you're doing something with that turn to make it worth it.
Right.
Because it's not that because part of the problem is people see this and they're like, well, even if you don't do anything, you still just essentially paid 0 mana to cycle a card and maybe play an extra land. But the problem is the opportunity cost of having this card in your hand that doesn't do anything. Your opening hand will have this 6 mana card that will mean that you missed a 2-drop play, or you missed your 5th land because just one of your cards is taken up by Part the Water Veil.
Right.
That's the cost. The cost isn't that sometimes you play this on turn 6, untap, and take your turn 7 without really doing much on turn 6. Like, that's fine. That's not a huge cost. The cost is that you just draw this card when you can't cast it, and it's just very, very bad.
Yeah.
But the upside at 9 mana is a very real one. So this card's interesting. I think I would play this in a ramp deck and be pretty happy to do so, because that's a deck that's well equipped to cast 9 mana spells, and getting to 6 isn't a huge chore. But in like a normal 17 land deck that doesn't have a lot of ways to get up to 9 mana, I don't think you can run this and have a ton of confidence that it's great. I don't know. I think this card's probably like a C, but if you do the work, it could be better than that.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, look, I think that when it comes down to it, you're probably not going to take this very highly, for winning the draft purposes, and it'll probably end up being pretty mediocre going around the table or whatever. But there might be one deck at the table that can make enough mana and is in blue, and can create triple blue that wants it. And even then, like you said, it's like 9 mana, man. I mean, that's a really, really tough, high bar to get to. But if you're ramping and can make blue mana, I'm sure you'd like to include Part the Water Veil in your deck for the higher upside. But overall, I don't see it being like some, really sought after pick or whatever in draft. Prism Array. This card's weird. It's 4 and a blue for an enchantment with Converge. It enters the battlefield with a crystal counter on it for each color of mana spent to cast it. And you can remove a crystal counter from it to tap a creature. That's it, though. Like, it just gets tapped. It doesn't do anything else. And strangely, you can play Wooburg, so, eat one of each color of mana to scry 3. And you can just do that as many times as you can pay it.
Why is this card weird? Oh, it's just because of all the text.
I think I just read it to you.
And what the card does.
Yeah.
Prism Array is the kind of card that is either a straight up 0, right, like an F,
yeah,
or one of the better cards in your deck. And,
okay, explain that.
Well, it's got Converge, so in a deck that you can pay 4 or 5 colors of mana, the card is pretty sweet. Because
how is that?
Well, imagine you play this for 4.
Okay.
You get 4 times of stopping your opponent from attacking with a creature, which I'm assuming you're going to use it somewhat defensively. Okay. And then that's actually a lot. I mean, you stopping a 5/5 from attacking you 4 times, 20 life.
Sure.
And then once you get to 5 colors of mana, I would not play this card if I couldn't activate the Scribe, by the way. I don't think that playing it for 4 colors of mana is quite enough. But if you can activate the Scribe, if you're one of these Converge decks, which again is not going to be very common, which is why I don't think the card's great. But if you're one of the decks that can generate 5 colors, playing this on 4 or 5 and then getting to scry 3, I mean, once you're starting to scry 3, you're going to get to whatever is in your deck that's great that you're looking for. Hopefully you have something. So, I mean, I've seen this card do good work. Josh, Utter Leighton actually drafted a pretty sweet Prism Array deck with a bunch of card draw spells and tons of mana fixing. He said the card was decent, so
And he could make 5 colors?
he could make 5 colors. You would not play the card if you couldn't. Actually, funnily enough, he lost to Brandon Nelson because Brandon ingested Josh's 1 planes. He has 1 planes in his deck, and Brandon just killed it with a Mist Intruder on like turn 4, and then it ended up losing Josh the game because he could never activate the Scry on this card. He could never cast his white spells because he had 1 planes with like a bunch of ways to search for it, which is generally fine. But it's actually one of the hidden drawbacks of
yeah.
So
of ingest, yeah, that's
yeah.
funny.
So,
I mean, this card seems bad to me, just like reading through it and stuff.
this
Like,
is-
I was going to give it a really low grade.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think you can just throw this straight in the build around category and
Okay.
say that if you're the 5 color deck, the hopefully only one at the table, then take a Prismarray late and be happy that you've got a really sweet little engine going. But in most decks, just don't play this card. So if you wanted like a snap, letter grade, I would say that it's an F. But I think it's actually just secretly a build around.
I like that.
That build around is just a prismatic deck.
Yeah, I was going to give it an F, but I think as a build around now that's interesting to me. So yeah, I'm on board for build around. Don't expect it to come together too often, but you'll probably pick that up whenever you want it, when it does. Scatter the Winds is next. It's 1 blue for an instant at rare. It says counter target spell, and it's got Awaken 3 for 4 blue.
Yeah, Scatter the Winds is great.
Seems good.
I mean, I don't know if you probably didn't mention it on Constructor Resources at all, but it is a very solid card.
We did mention it,
Oh.
as a matter of fact. In the set review, we talked about it. But, look, normally I'm not super hot on counterspells unlimited. I think you can play them sometimes, and these ones are the kind that you can play, the ones that just say counter a spell. They're not conditional. But you know what? This set really does, we do have that Eldrazi thing going on, and there's a lot of fatties, and there's a lot of Scion tokens being sacked to, put one big threat out earlier than it should go. And a card like Scatter to the Winds can really, can hit something relevant a lot more often than it would in, say, like Origins or something like that, where people are curving out with smaller creature decks, and your Scatter to the Winds is often stranded in your hand because you need to affect the board more. I think you can actually get away with it pretty reasonably here. And on top of it, the Awaken 3 for 4 blue will come up as well. And that's a pretty big deal. Like getting to counter a spell and make your own 3/3 is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think that the key to evaluating this card is that 1 blue counter target spell is a playable card.
Mm-hmm.
This format lends itself to having this card in your deck.
Yeah.
And then if you can snap off the Awaken part of it, then the card is great.
Then your thumbs up in a big way. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like it.
Basically, I love flexible cards that have a good baseline and just go up from there, which is exactly where Scatter the Winds lands. I mean, again, this isn't like a bomb rare exactly, but it is. I would just say a B.
Yeah, I was going to give it a B-, but sure, I think it's fine. Yeah, like I said, I think the key here is that this set does seem to be well suited to counterspells, basically. All right, next is I had to play against this, Luis. It was a harrowing experience. Ugin's Insight.
Yeah, Ugin's Insight is great.
It's so mean to me. I haven't gotten one, right? Like I didn't get one. My opponent got one. I didn't get one. 3 blue sorcery, rare. Scry X, where X is the highest converted mana cost among permanents you control, then draw 3 cards. So I'm sitting there crafting this game, and I'm trading, and I'm like just a little bit ahead, and I'm like, okay, I've almost got this thing all settled down. Opponent's down to 1 more card, and he's like, Ugin's Insight. I'm like, what does that do again? I'm like, no. And he just like sets up, puts 2 cards on top, draws 3, and I'm just like, this game's just over now. Just raw card advantage.
Yeah. The card that is 3 blue sorcery, draw 3 cards. That's a fine card.
I'm in. Yeah.
I mean, Jason's Ingenuity is great because it was an instant, but to be honest, Ugin's Ingenuity would also be fine. But Ugin's Insight is much better than that. You're not going to miss on the scry all that often, and when you get to scry for like 3 to like sometimes up to like 7, and that is actually a serious amount of card digging. Like getting to look at a bunch of cards, reject them, or keep the ones you like, and then draw 3 cards. I mean, when you're talking about card draw, this is among the best card draw that you can get in Limited.
No, totally. It's so powerful too. 3 cards, and like you said, because of the scry, you're going to be able to draw not just cards but spells more often. And when you get to the later part of the game, that's where certain spells spike in value, and those are the ones that you really want to find. And this helps you do that. Forget it. Ugin's Insight is fantastic. Now, it doesn't affect the board, and it's a little expensive at 5 in sorcery speed, so I don't want to give it like a super high grade because for example, I have played against, and this was in sealed, by the way, not even in draft, and I lean on your opinion for how it looks in draft, but I have played against 2 different ally decks already, and they're fast. Like, I was like, crap. A 2-3-4 curve out with the ally deck had me sweating under the collar, and I'd be pretty worried about getting time to fire off the Insight. Against the slower Eldrazi decks, then this card just goes up. I still think it's great, though. I would give it a B+. I don't want to give it an A. I don't want to put it in the A range, but I would give it a B+.
Yeah, I think that it's hard to give a higher grade than that to a card that just absolutely does not affect the board,
and which is fairly expensive. Yeah,
which you can think inside it fits that bill. But yeah, it's a B+. It's a great card. There's some matchups where it's going to be among the better cards in your deck, but that's just balanced by when you play against the black red Devoid deck or the ally deck, and you might choose to just put Ugins instead of the bottom of your library in those matchups.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for blue. Blue looked pretty good. Maybe not quite as raw power, but some good stuff in there.
Yeah, blue had some solid cards. It had some. I mean, besides Guardian Tazim, which is just by far the best blue card, it has some weird ones. So it's got a lot of build arounds and is definitely harder on Converge than some of the other colors. Two rares that pay you pretty heavily for Converge, which is something to keep in mind. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to black. Defiant Bloodlord is our first card. It's 5 black for a 4/5 flying vampire at rare. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. I don't like this one as much.
Well, see, to properly evaluate this card, look at the casting cost in the top right and look at the stats and the fact that it was flying, and then you basically have it. Since I've actually even played against this card, and it was just that. It was a 7-mana 4/5 flyer, which is just not quite good enough.
Which is kind of not very good, right? And I mean, we have noted, we talked about it in the comments and a commons review that there might be a bit of a life game sub theme going around with black white or something, but I think that's going to happen for the most part before you get Defiant Bloodlord on the battlefield, and even if it happens a couple of times after, that doesn't seem like a big effect to me. I'm certainly not willing to run life gain only spells just to try to make Defiant Bloodlord good. So yeah, this thing just doesn't seem that great to me. Like you said, a 4/5 flying for 7 does not hit the bar on the vanilla test either.
Yeah, it's just not really a build around and not really a card you play for like straight up rate. So I think Defiant Bloodlord is like a D. Where
it's like a D, right?
If you need a 7 drop in your deck, which I'm going to argue that not every deck does. But no, if you want a card to fill at the top of your curve, a 4/5 flyer is a thing. Like that is a card that when it's in play, you're like, wow, this card's pretty good. Mm-hmm. But the problem is it just costs 7, so it's not a card you should play very often.
Agree. Next is Drana, Liberator of Malakir. 1 black for a 2/3 flying first strike. Legendary creature vampire ally at Mythic Rare. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature you control. Woo!
Well, Drana is another one of those cards in the kind of undergrowth champion category where she gets a really high rating just because of how easily she wins you the game when you play her on turn 3. The difference is Drana's just much, much better than undergrowth champion. She's bomb level power also for just 3 mana.
For only 3 mana. Yeah. I actually had this in one of my sealed pools and she was unreal.
Well, yeah. I mean, Drana is just a straight up A+. Like,
you have her that high?
Look, when you play this on turn 3, you win the game if they can't kill it. And like she just dominates. And even later in the game, she's still very good. I mean, she first strikes, gives your whole team +1/+1, and then they do normal damage. I just don't see how you can say this card is just not one of the best cards in the set.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a tough one, right? Because so one thing we have to explain here is that there's a kind of a tricky interaction, right? So you attack with 3 of your creatures, including Drana, and she gets through because she has flying, let's say. When first strike damage hits, that's when she triggers. And that means that even if your 3/3 got blocked by a 3/3 on their side, it's going to pick up a counter and run it over. So what you're saying, Luis, is that she effectively puts your creatures 1 step higher than they would normally be for their mana costs, assuming that they're attacking and she's attacking with them, which means your opponent just never gets to catch up.
Yeah, and a 2/3 flying first strike is also a good blocker.
It's a solid blocker, yeah.
I mean, you can draw Drana on turn 7 and she'll still be a very good card.
Okay. I was going to give Drana an A-, but I'm totally, like I said, I had her in a sealed. It's a little bit different of a format than Booster Draft. And also I honestly didn't get to play her very much. So I don't really feel like I have a great feel for actual in-game play. And it's very possible that the first time somebody plays this on me on turn 3 and just completely runs me over, that I just text you and go, yep, A+, not A-.
Yeah. It's just, I understand the impulse of saying, this shouldn't get the highest grade because it's some games just a 3-mana 2/3 flyer.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that Drana she has such a sweeping effect on the game, and she is a card you can cast on turn 3 and just completely overrun the opponent. The combination of those two things, I think, is just too much for me.
Okay, fair enough. What about Gul'Draz's Overseer?
Gul'Draz's Overseer, another expensive flying vampire, 4 black for a 3/4, and with flying, and has landfall. Give all your creatures +1/+0 until end of turn. All your other creatures. I misread this in my first set review. And if the land is a swamp, +2/+0. So, in best case scenario, you're playing this, then playing a swamp, giving all your other creatures +2/+0, and then next turn doing the same. The Gul'Draz's Overseer is just a fine card.
That's okay,
Nothing too impressive. This is a little better than Defiant Bloodlord just because the casting cost is lower and has a more powerful effect, but it's still not insane.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that insane to me. I would give it is it like a B-?
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. I think it's probably a B just because there are some games where Gul'Draz's Overseer is going to do a lot of work.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. If you've got a big board, that does make basically everything need to be blocked. I'll give it a B. Let's see, what do we got next? Oh, this guy? Ob Nixilis Reignited.
Ob Nixilis is sweet.
God, this card's good. I had a drastic misfortune of playing against it in the pre-release, and I was like, in fact, it was the same guy that had Ugin's Insight.
Nice.
Yeah, his name is Ryan, and he gave me our first Battle for Zendikar pack for Crack-A-Pack next week. I've got it here. It
was one of the prize packs he won after beating you?
Yeah. That's exactly what happened. He crushed me with Ob Nixilis and stupid Ugin's Insight. So what does Ob Nixilis do?
Besides defeat Marshall, it's 3 black for a Planeswalker, Nixilis.
It's not Ob, by the way. I always thought his name was Ob, but apparently it's Nixilis.
Anyways, it's 3 black for a Planeswalker with 5 loyalty. It has +1, draw a card and lose a life. -3, destroy target creature. And -8, target opponent gets an emblem with whenever a player draws a card, you lose 2 life. So the baseline on Ob Nixilis is you play this, you kill their best creature, and you have a 2 loyalty Planeswalker that's going to start drawing you cards. That's a pretty great baseline.
That's pretty good for 5 mana.
Yeah, and sometimes you play this and your opponent just has like a 2/2 out. You don't even necessarily want to kill it. You can just +1, go up to 6 loyalty, draw a card, then next turn probably +1 it again, and play something to defend it because you just do 2 extra cards.
Right.
It also can just come down and kill their 5/5, and if you have any way to defend it, that's great. And even if you don't, at the very worst, Ob Nixilis kills their best creature and eats a hit for a 2 or 3.
It's so sick. This card's amazing. Being able to -3 kill a creature and have a 3 and a 2 loyalty Planeswalker left over is disgusting. When you play again, like when you're actually playing, and your opponent's just like, kill your 5-drop or whatever, and you're just staring down this thing like, if I can't kill this immediately, it just dominates the board. I mean, I think Ob Nixilis is absolutely fantastic. It has this very clean delineation between whether you're ahead or behind. If you're behind, you kill their creature. If you're ahead, you start drawing cards. Or if you're at parity, you start drawing cards. And it's just that simple. And the thing just helps you win the game. And in my limited experience with it, it dominates in a pretty big way.
Yeah, Ob Nixilis is great. I think Ob Nixilis is an A.
I do too.
He does some good work, and there's not very many times when he's not going to be great.
Yeah, I just would always want that. Painful Truths is 2 and a black for a sorcery at rare. It says converge. You draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast it. So we're talking about draw 3 cards, lose 3 life for 3 mana, or maybe draw 2, lose 2 for 3 mana.
So this is, the obvious comparison is Read the Bones.
Right.
This is a kind of like a rare version of Read the Bones because it's going to very often be 2 and a black, draw 2, lose 2. You missed out on the scry there, but what can you do? And sometimes it's going to be draw 3, lose 3. And sometimes actually it will be draw 1, lose 1 if you don't really want to spend 2 life. And if you have three swamps actually. But despite this being a rare, it is more common feeling just because of Read the Bones, I suppose. That being said, I think this card is fine. I mean,
I do too.
I will play it in my 2-color deck and be okay with it. I'll play it in my 3-color deck and be happy with it. It is not a card I want to play when I'm dying, but it is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good too. I mean, I think it's probably C+ range. Maybe it gets up into the B- because you can draw 3 cards with it, which is really powerful. I haven't played with it yet, so I don't really have a feel for that. But I think the card's solid. Painful Truths to me is good. I think it's a good card.
Yeah, it's a good card. I don't think much more than that. I think it's like a C, probably like a C+.
It's probably C+, yeah. This next one's really good. It's called Ruinous Path. It's 1 black for a sorcery. It says destroy target creature or planeswalker, and it's got Awaken 4 for 5 black. So 7 mana to Awaken 4. Sweet.
Yeah, at 3 mana, this card's great. And at 7 mana, this card's great. I mean, that's exactly what I want out of my Awaken cards. It's just going to be one of the better cards in your deck because it's such a good versatile answer that also just has a lot of power once you get up to 7 mana. So, I mean, I think it's probably just like an A-.
I think it's an A-. It might even just be an A.
Yeah, I mean, this is just an A. I mean,
it's just an A, yeah.
It's just good at any cost.
Yeah, I mean, if I told you that you could spend 7 mana to blow up a creature and get a 4/4, like, you'd be pretty happy with that. And if I told you, and by the way, for the times when you don't get to 7 mana, you can just blow up a creature for 3. It's like, what? Like, that's great. It's just everything I want in a Magic card. I give it an A. Let's see what's next. Smothering Abomination, 2 black for a 4/3 Eldrazi. It's a rare. It's got Devoid and Flying. So we got a 4 mana 4/3 Flying. That's big. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. Ouch. But it gives us a little bit back. It says whenever you sacrifice a creature, draw a card. Woo!
Which is a great combo with Eldrazi Scions, because you can just play Smothering Abomination, and immediately if you have 2 or 3 Scions in play, you get to cash them in for a bunch of cards.
Wow. And then, of course, there's this cyclical thing, right, where you're drawing the extra cards, which means you're hitting your land drops and casting more creatures, which then can be sacrificed to this thing. And the whole time, it's a 4/3 Flying for 4. It is hitting them very hard in the air.
Yeah, Smothering Abomination is great, and the only way to really lose out on this card, because even if it's by itself, you still draw a card if you sacrifice it, would be if
really? You still get a card back even if you're... Wow, I didn't even think about that. If you're forced to sacrifice it, you still get the card out of it?
Right, like if you have nothing going on, you could play Smothering Abomination on an empty board. Your opponent's probably not going to attack into it. Then next turn it eats itself, but you draw a card. Or I guess it smothers itself.
That is insane.
There is a timing thing that doesn't work out great, which is you play this, and then your opponent, like, if they have an instant speed way to kill it, kills it on your upkeep, and then you still have to sacrifice something.
And you don't get the card anymore.
And you don't get the card. But that's not great. But that's not going to happen very often. So I think this card is very good because if you build around it, it's fantastic. And even if you don't, if you just have this in a normal creature-heavy deck, it's just going to turn out well. You get to cash in your worst creature for a card every turn, and it's a 4/3 flyer while you're doing that.
Yeah, and like we said, it feeds itself because you cash your worst creature in, but then you're replaying new creatures, and some of them might be expendable, and you're kind of working your way through the deck. I really like this card. I like this card a lot more than I thought I would on first read. I think a Smothering Abomination is great. And again, I think the easy thing to overlook is, we gave Akum Firebird a very high grade as a 3/3 haste for 4. Well, this is a 4/3 Flying for 4, which is, approaching that level, and it hits really hard in the air.
Yeah. So I think, I would probably give this an A-. I think it does enough by itself, and well, maybe it's a B+. I don't know.
I was going to go B+, but whatever.
Yeah, I think B+ is probably closer. I think this has the capability of reaching A, just because in a deck full of Eldrazi Scions and Blister Pods and whatnot, the card is fantastic. It's just one of your best cards.
Totally.
In a normal deck, it's probably closer to a B+. So I will give it a B+ because that's where I think it's going to land a lot of the time that you take it. But just be aware that if you do a little work, the card can give you some pretty good returns.
Yeah, I have the same thoughts. Last black card is Wasteland Strangler. It's 2 and a black for a 3/2 Eldrazi processor with Devoid. And since it's a processor, it says when it enters the battlefield, you may put a card an opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard. We call that processing. It says if you do, target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. Yikes. That's good.
I've gotten Strangled on turn 3 before, and it is not great. Turn 2 horribly awry, turn 3 Wasteland Strangler game.
That's pretty good.
This is one of the cards that you want in the processor. Like this is the kind of card that drives me to put Mist Intruder into my deck.
Right.
And it's not hard to get this going. There are enough ways to exile one card that the one card processors are just, I would say, pretty easy to make work. I mean, you do have to build around them, but it's not like you have to go all in on processors to make this work. And a 3-mana 3/2 is just a fine fail case.
It's fine. Yeah, that's no problem at all. Card seems great to me. What grade would you give it? Like a B plus?
I would give this a B plus. I think this is
2
kind of
ones are amazing.
Smothering Abomination, where it's going to be fine and going to be great in some decks.
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for black. So that gives that's all of our single colors. We'll move on to multicolored now, and then we'll move our way through artifact, colorless, and land. So multicolored, first one is Angelic Captain, 3 white, red for a 4/3 flying angel ally at rare. Whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other attacking ally. Friend of the, it's an ally of the allies. That's kind of weird, right? Like,
so by itself, this is a 4/3 flyer.
Yeah, which is fine.
That's it, because it doesn't trigger off itself.
Right.
And it does, it does make your other allies better when you just play this because it is an ally.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, if you have other allies, this can attack as a 5/4 or a 6/5.
I'm assuming that's not like a huge upside.
No, I mean, it's an upside. I mean, a 5-mana 4/3 flyer is good already. And it's not too hard to make this into a 5/4 or a 6/5.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. That deck seems good. I mean, the card seems good to me. I'm not blown away by it because the setup cost is a little finicky, but it's all gravy anyway. Like you said, the 4/3 flying for 5 is good enough on its own, and the fact that it's an ally helps, and then you get the random bonus too. Yeah, sure. Angelic Captain, I like it. Seems fine.
Yeah, it's a fine card. So one of the things we have to keep in mind when we're evaluating multicolored cards is these grades are kind of assuming you're in these colors, because otherwise we'd just have to give a penalty to every multicolored card, because first picking one multicolored card is just not as good as first picking a monocolored card, because you're not going to end up in exactly red and white very often. So.
Right. Or you have to warp your deck to splash it or something like that.
Well, yeah. Basically, if you first pick Angelic Captain, but then see 3 good black cards in a row, you might easily just abandon it. Yeah. And that's less likely to happen if it was a mono red card, if it cost 3 red, for example.
Right,
but
exactly.
That all being said, we're kind of grading as ignoring that, because we're just trying to evaluate the card as its straight power level if you could cast it, which I think Angelic Captain is just a B.
It's a B, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Bring to Light is next. It's 3 green-blue for a sorcery with Converge. Search your library for a creature, instant, or sorcery card. Weird. With converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of colors spent to cast Bring to Light. Exile that card, then shuffle your library. You can cast the card without paying its mana cost. So,
well, this is my favorite card in the set for Constructed, for what it's worth.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, Eric liked it. Maybe not quite as much as that.
Well, I more mean like I like it, and not that I think it's the best card in the set for Constructed.
Oh, I see. Okay, it is sweet. So let's say we do it for 3. Let's say we're obviously already playing 2 colors here. So let's just say we have a third color. So we get to go get a 3 mana instant sorcery or creature and play it for free. Is that good? It doesn't seem very good to me unless I have some very specific, requirements for that. So then my thought process goes, well, what if we've got 5 colors, right? Like, let's just say I get to go get a 5-drop with this thing. Does that make me happy? And yeah, that does. Just don't know how often I'm actually going to have 5 mana of 5 different colors.
This is one of the Converge cards where I think the payoff is not one that drives me to want to make it work.
Right.
Because, like you said, if you cast this and are getting a 3-drop, then you're probably losing out, just because 3-drops aren't worth 5 mana. That's why they cost 3. If you're getting a 4-drop, you're getting closer, because you do get selection. You get their best 3-drop or your best 4-drop, which has some value. And once you're getting a 5-drop, you're not losing on the mana, and you are getting selection, which is nice. You're doubling up on your good cards. But
that's obviously very difficult.
It's just so much work. You're getting 5 different colors of mana, 4 different colors of mana. This is the kind of card which I would play in some of my Converge decks, but I wouldn't take early, and I wouldn't draft around exactly. It's the sort of thing where if you end up in the 4 to 5 color Converge deck, and you get a Bring to Light with 3 cards in the pack, yeah, you'll play it. Mm-hmm. Or at least try it. But it's not a card you're going to first pick, and it's not a card you're going to see and say, the Converge deck is open. So from that regard, I think it's kind of like Prism Array, where
it's build around.
It's just a build around card, but it's not even one that's really that motivational. So it's closer to an F than a build around, but you can look at it as either.
Yeah, I was going to give it a D- or an F, but I'll go build around just because I think if you're 2 to 3 colors, you're not playing it anyway. Brood Butcher is next. It's a 3 black-green for a 3/3 Eldrazi drone at rare. It's got Devoid. And when it enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 Eldrazi creature, 1/1 Scion, and you can pay black-green and sacrifice a creature to give target creature -2/2 until end of turn.
This card is fantastic. It's
Boom.
5 mana for 4 points of stats. All right, that's a thing. But it is a great activated ability.
No kidding. Any creature, too.
Getting to throw your creatures at their creatures for 2 mana is very, very good. And it already comes with some ammunition, right? I mean, it comes with an Eldrazi Scion to begin with. So, Brood Butcher's an A. It's the kind of card that just dominates the board when you play it. Yeah. If you have this and a bunch of untapped mana, your opponent's just in a world of hurt.
Yeah, I love Brood Butcher. This is the kind of card I want to play because its basement is not that low, and it goes way higher from there. I give it an A. Brutal Expulsion is 2 blue-red for an instant. Devoid at rare. It says choose one or both. Return target spell or creature to its owner's hand. That was one choice. The other one is it deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If that permanent would be put into a graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So you get to do 2 damage to a creature, and I'm assuming that you're not going to be facing too many planeswalkers, and you get to bounce a spell or creature. Now, for people that haven't bounced a spell before, spell goes on the stack, you target it with Brutal Expulsion, and it goes back to its owner's hand as opposed to resolving. So it just goes back to their hand. If they have enough mana, they can recast it after or whatever. But it's a weird thing, the Venser, Shaper, Savant type deal. But it works actually pretty cleanly in the game. It just sounds weird when you first read it. Brutal Expulsion seems great, though. My God, that's a lot of versatility out of this thing. Instant speed, too.
It's hard to imagine a game or a board state where Brutal Expulsion doesn't do something good.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the options on this card are limitless, which is, of course, why this card is sweet. And I mean, the base level is that it's going to kill one of their 2 toughness creatures and bounce either one of their creatures or spells, which already is good. I mean, that's pretty sweet. But there are a lot of things you can do with this. You can set it up to bounce one of your own creatures. You can finish off a 5/5 after blocking with a 3/3. You can exile something to enable processing. It's the sort of thing where if you keep up 4 mana and they play into it, and you get to use it for value, but if they don't play into it, then you still probably get to use it pretty well. It's kind of hard to get around the card.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that it's instant speed, which of course means that you get to do the spell thing. But even then, bouncing creatures at instant speed during combat is a big game. Brutal Expulsion just seems great. Like, I just feel like if you take the time to figure out all of the different options for it, that if you can cast this card in a game of limited, you're going to get a big edge. I mean, you're going to find some abusive, stupid thing to do with it, and you're going to kind of get your opponent. And, I mean, this is the kind of card I love to play too. Just, it lets you, figure out the best way to get value out of it. I love it. I think Brutal Expulsion's great. Don't know how high to grade it. I want to give it a pretty high grade. Like, I want to give it into the B to B plus range. Even though when you look at it, what it's really doing is not killing a creature and killing a small creature probably. So it is just like more of a tempo type situation. But still, I value that pretty highly. Especially again, in a set, where we're playing Eldrazi and people are sacking a whole bunch of things to it. And then you bounce it back to their hand and kill their other guy. And next thing you know, they can't replay the Eldrazi. Like, these situations pop up sometimes as well. So I like it a lot. I'm going to give it a B.
I think this card's a little better than that. I think it's like a B plus.
Okay. Yeah. I could be convinced. I kind of want to give it.
Could be plus convinced.
Yes. Duststalker is 2 black-red for a 5/3 Eldrazi with Devoid and Haste. And at the beginning of each end step, if you control no other colorless creatures, return Duststalker to its owner's hand.
This card is very aggressive.
That's a beater right there.
Yeah. Duststalker gets to hit them for 5. Pretty much in any case. And sometimes we'll make you recast it a bunch of times. That's the downside, is if you're playing this, let's say you had 0 other colorless creatures in your deck, right? This is always going to return. That card's not great. Some decks would want that effect, but most wouldn't, just because you can't spend turn 4 essentially drawbacks on your opponent but getting nothing else out of it.
Right.
It's just you're not developing your board at all. You're going to end up, with nothing in play. Good thing is this color combination is the one that has a lot of devoid creatures, waiting in it. So often you can play Duststalker, it's not going to return. Then the second time they probably have to trade something for it. The optimal play for your opponent is to take the hit and then bounce or kill your other colorless creature, or hopefully creatures, so to send this back. But again, it hits so hard that they don't have that much time to set that up.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It says at the beginning of each end step as well. So even if you think that you get to save it, they can use sorcery speed removal to kill your other colorless creature and bounce it. One thing that I have noticed from my short time with the format is that there's a lot more colorless. Like you can have a deck with 15, 18, 20 colorless cards in it if you really want. This only counts creatures, but still, I think keeping this around is going to happen more often than it seems at first glance. I'm not in love with Duststalker. I think it's good though. I would never cut it from, a black-red deck that could cast it, I don't think. But, this isn't the kind of card that makes me just go, wow, I have to play this. It's like, this does its job pretty well, but ultimately it's on the ground. It doesn't have any evasion. It can be chump blocked. It can be traded with fairly easily. At some point, it has a downside of getting bounced to your hand. I'm not in love with the card, but I do think it's strong.
Yeah, it's very, like I said, very aggressive. It really is a card with a plan. You can't really just play this in a random mid-range deck and expect it to be all that great unless you have just tons of colorless creatures. And certainly a control deck does not want this effect very much. Right. But in an aggro deck, it's great. And in a deck with 10 plus other colorless creatures, it's going to stick around often enough. So I think it's like a B-. I
think it's a B-, yeah.
It's the kind of card that's powerful enough to get a good grade, but not so insane that you're always going to play it.
Yeah. Ooh, this next card's one of my favorite cards from the set. It might be my favorite rare. It's Fathom Feeder. It's blue-black for a 1/1 devoid Death Touch Eldrazi drone, and it's got Ingest, and it has 4 abilities: Devoid, Death Touch, Ingest, and you can pay 3 blue-black to draw a card, and each opponent exiles the top card of his or her library as well.
Yeah, Fathom Feeder is great. It's
sweet.
It's a Typhoid Rats to begin with, right? A 1/1 Death Touch.
And in an Eldrazi format, I'm pretty excited about a Typhoid Rats, to be honest.
Right, that's already good. It has Ingest, which means sometimes it'll poke in and exile a card, which sets up some of your other cards. And most importantly, you can just pay 5 mana to draw a card and exile one of their cards, which again, setting up processors. So a 1/1 Death Touch that you can trade off at pretty much any point for a low amount of mana that has this 5 mana ability that's going to help you take over the game. That's a very solid card. I
love it. God, I love that card. It's so cool. The artwork's even sweet too. What a home run. How high have you grade it though? Because I have it pretty high. I have it in the B range. I just think it's it hits the utility on the early part of the game, the late part of the game, and it's for just 2 mana. Albeit 2 different colors of mana. So, like you said at the beginning, you don't always get to just cast it. But for the most part, I think Fathom Feeder just hits all the notes I want it to hit without going over the top on any of them. 5 mana to draw a card is a powerful ability, but it's also expensive, right? I mean, that's a lot of mana that you're dumping into the thing. And it is a 1/1. So ultimately, if they want to kill it, they can. Basically every removal kills it. But still, I have it at least in the B range. I'm considering going to B+. I haven't figured out how good a Typhoid Rats type card is in the format yet. I'm assuming it's good based on what I've seen. I think if it was very good, I would give this a B+. As it sits, I'll probably just give it a B.
Yeah, I would probably tend towards B+, just because when you trade it off, you probably won on mana and it can just dominate the game later. So the combination of those 2 things means it's pretty hard to imagine a game where this isn't at least good, and sometimes it'll be great.
Well, if you're going to go to B+, I'm going to B+, because I love that card.
Fair enough.
Kiora. What does Kiora, Master of the Depths, do?
Kiora is 2 blue-green for a Planeswalker. She starts with 4 loyalty, and her +1 is untap up to 1 target creature and up to 1 target land. Her -2 is reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You can put a creature card and or a land card among them in your hand, the rest in your graveyard. And her -8, well, it does some stuff.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work to get up to that point.
And to read it, her -8 is you get an emblem with whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may have it fight target creature. then put 3 8/8 blue octopus creature tokens onto the battlefield.
In limited, that does just end the game. Because, in constructed, you always think, well, they're going to wrath me or whatever. But here, it's just like, yeah, that does just finish it off. But I don't know. What do you think about Kiora? I mean, Planeswalkers in general in limited are very powerful. Even the mediocre ones tend to kind of warp the board state and put in good work. Kiora, I think, is a step up from a mediocre Planeswalker. But, she doesn't have that same kind of crushing effect that Ob Nixilis does.
It's true. Kiora needs some creatures to defend her because by herself, she doesn't actually do anything.
Right.
She doesn't impact the board. She untaps your creatures and your lands, which, kind of accelerates your mana, and she draws you cards. Those things are neat, but if you play Kiora and your opponent's creatures out, she's going to get taken down.
Right. But now -2 in Kiora is pretty decent value, but it's a little awkward, right? Because she comes in at 4 loyalty, you -2 her, and she's very vulnerable at that point. I mean, she gets hit by basically any creature worth its salt, and Kiora's swimming back into the ocean. If she does survive, like if you chump block a couple times or whatever, then you're -2ing again in many scenarios, and you're cashing her in for a good chunk of cards. Nothing wrong with that, but she's gone. It's not like they didn't make it, one of those scenarios where you can go like minus, plus, minus, and kind of get this thing going. If you set yourself on the course of -2 and then -2, Kiora's out of there. I mean, whatever. Like, it's just hard, right? Because like she's still like a powerful planeswalker. I don't think you're passing her.
If you play Kiora in -2 and draw 2 cards, and then your opponent kills her, you still drew 2 cards.
You're still ahead. Like that's the thing is that these planeswalkers are so good that even a more middle ground one like Kiora for limited still just friggin' awesome, right?
Yeah, I mean, Kiora, and if you can defend her, she does do a lot. She draws extra cards. She accelerates your mana. Yeah, overall, Kiora's a fine card. I would probably give her a B just because of...
I think she's a B.
She's such a powerful engine if you can defend her.
Yeah. March of the Tomb is next. It's 3 white-black for a sorcery. Return any number of target ally creature cards with total converted mana cost 8 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So 2 things that jump out, Luis. 1, white-black. 2, we just need to be in the ally deck to run this, and then I think we do, right?
Yeah, once you're in the ally deck, March from the Tomb is just going to get you at least 2 creatures back and sometimes more.
And then, is white-black an issue? Like, I know that there's allies in the different colors, but like, is this the color pair that we really want to have the ally deck with?
It's not the main color pair, but there's a white-black ally deck that gains life that uses like the Colostria Healer, the 1/2 that drains them for 1 when you play an ally. And March of the Tomb fits very well in that deck. But ally decks are often, chromatic enough that they can just splash on March from the Tomb if need be.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of a tricky card to evaluate because now we're saying, well, you have to be able to cast it and you also have to be in a heavy ally deck. And even then, I'm not convinced that this card's like amazing. Your creatures have to have died for value to make this card great. And sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, if you can just trade them all off and then get them all back, then you're way ahead. But, don't get it twisted. If you chump block with an ally and then get it back with March from the Tomb, you're not doing yourself a big service. And, there's also times where, March from the Tomb isn't what you want. You have 1 ally in your graveyard or maybe 2. And, you just didn't happen to draw another one or whatever. And this card kind of doesn't do what you want to do.
Yeah. It's a very specific card. It's
so narrow.
It's getting to the point where it's probably just a build around. It's the kind of card that in the ally deck, in the deck with 10 allies, this card's like a B+, maybe even an A-, but probably closer to a B+. But in an average deck, it could just be an F. So that makes me want to just call this build around and not one that I think I'm willing to first pick at this point in the draft format.
I'll call it a build around and not even a good one at that. I don't even think that card's very good. Munda Ambush Leader is 2 red-white for a 3/4 legendary creature core ally at rare. Munda has haste, and whenever Munda Ambush Leader or another ally enters a battlefield under you control, this is of course Rally, you may look at the top 4 cards of your library. If you do, reveal any number of ally cards from among them, put those cards on top of your library in any order, and the rest on the bottom in any order. All right, so let's just forget that whole Rally thing. 2 red-white for a 3/4 haste on an ally. That's pretty good, right?
You would play 2 red, white, 3/4 haste. Well, even if it wasn't an ally, like the card is just good. 4 mana, 3/4 haste is great.
Yeah. Now you get this weird rally ability that seems fine.
The ability is pure upside, just because even if you don't want to draw allies, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, you can just not. So
yeah, you can choose to look, and you can choose not to reveal if you hit like an ally you don't want.
Yeah. So there you go. So look, I think that it's easy to get caught up in the rally ability on Munda, but this is what we have the vanilla test for, is to separate out the two things and to note that this is just gravy. It's upside. It might not be amazing. You don't get to draw the cards. It's not like some, ridiculous card draw engine, but setting up the next few allies is real. I mean, that's a thing. These decks often get to the point where if they can just cast one more ally, then they can win the game. And Munda makes sure that you do that and hits really hard as 4 mana 3/4 as well. So I like this card a lot. I think it's really solid. I think it's great in the ally deck. I think it's good enough in the not ally deck as well. And I would probably give him like a B+.
Yeah, I think so. I think the fact that Munda is just a good card that can improve the quality of our draw steps and is just a 3/4 haste. All those together make Munda a very good card, even not in an ally deck.
Yeah. Noyan Dar, Royal Shaper. What does Noyan do?
This card is very annoying. It's 3 blue-white for a 4/4. It's an ally, a legendary merfolk ally at that. And it says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put 3++1 counters on target land you control. It becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste. So this is Awaken 3. Whenever you cast an instant, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, Awaken 3. Noyan Dar is very good because a 5 mana 4/4 is already all right, and all of a sudden, all of your spells have a free Awaken 3 tacked onto them. You can also just keep stacking on the same land. You can also cast Awaken spells, and it's now like they're awakening multiple times. And Noyan Dar is just going to overrun your opponent pretty quickly with lands here.
Yeah, that seems really solid to me, especially because of what you said, that 4 mana 4/4 for 5 is fine on its own. It's fairly resilient. It tussles well. Yeah, Noyan Dar seems really solid to me. I like the card a lot. I think it's in the B+ range as well.
Yeah, I would probably give Noyan Dar a B+. Though I think if you're in these colors and have a bunch of spells, you're not going to pass him pack 3 for almost anything.
Yeah, that's true. What about Omnath, Locus of Rage?
Omnath, Locus of Rage is 3 red, green, green. So 7 total for a 5/5 legendary elemental. Has landfall, put a 5/5 red and green elemental into play, and whenever Omnath or another elemental you control dies, Omnath deals 3 to anything.
Well, I guess we get our mana's worth here.
Yeah,
Omnath mad.
So even if you never live, to have this card landfall, if you just play Omnath and then immediately gets killed, it's still lightning bolt something on the way out. That's very good. A 7 mana 5/5 that lightning bolts when it dies. Be a card you'd at least consider. The fact that it has an incredibly powerful landfall ability makes this very appealing.
Yeah. The question is how easy or hard is it to cast, right? It's 7 mana, which I think...
It's hard is the answer.
It is, right? Yeah. Because 7 mana we can get to. We know that in this format we can get to 7, but red, green, green is pretty tough.
Yeah, it's a lot more restrictive than just 7 colorless, just because double red in addition to the double green. The double green is not as bad because a lot of the multicolor decks and the ramp decks are going to play green. But this locks you into either being 2 colors or having a decent amount of fixing.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if you're playing this, though, if you're just in the green-red deck, you just always play Omnath, right?
Well, for sure you're playing this in green-red. The question is, how early do you want to take this? Is this
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Assuming it costs 7 colorless, right? Like if you open this in a green-red deck in pack 2 or 3, then this card is an A because it's that powerful. But it also does require a lot of mana and a lot of colors. So my guess is that you have to give this card probably a B+, maybe an A-, just because of the power level. But be aware that I think actually here's what it is. Omnath's an A-. It's just not a card you're going to play as often as you'd like if you take it early.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that a lot. That's a good way to frame it. All right, A- for Omnath. This next card I like a lot. I got lucky enough to have one of these as well, and it was a really cool card to watch your opponent squirm under. It's a Sire of Stagnation, 4 blue-black for a 5/7 Eldrazi at Mythic Rare. It's devoid, and it says whenever a land enters a battlefield on your opponent's control, that player exiles the top 2 cards of his or her library, and you draw 2 cards.
So what this really says is it's a 5/7 that says your opponent can't play lands.
Exactly, that's how they play against it.
Because how can you play a land? Your opponent draws 2 cards if they play. Or sorry, you draw 2 cards if your opponent plays a land.
Yeah,
like there's no way that they can play.
They're not going to let me be.
I would rather
happy.
lose the game than play lands.
Exactly, and my opponents did exactly that. They didn't play lands and they lost the game. Thing's amazing. Yeah, I love this card. Also, I'm impressed by the stats. Sure, it doesn't have evasion, but it's a 5/7 for 6 mana in blue-black, which is definitely above the grade. 7 toughness is a heck of a lot. It actually attacks and blocks really well while sitting there and being like, are you sure you want to play a land? And I really like that. I think Sire of Stagnation super good. A-, sure. Yeah, whatever. I'll give it an A-. I think the card's great.
In some formats, Sire of Stagnation I think would be lower than A-, but you're going to frequently play against people who do want to play their 7th land, their 6th land, their 8th land. And given that, and the fact that you can just sit there on this card and just make it so it's really hard for your opponent to win the game, I think A- is fine.
Love that card, by the way. Last rare for the gold section is Veteran War Leader. It's 1 green-white for a star human soldier ally. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control, and you can tap another untapped ally you control to give it either First Strike, Vigilance, or Trample until end of turn.
So I misread this card initially and thought it was just as big as the number of allies you had. So I thought the card, this card's fine but not great. Yeah, the card's great. It's
really good.
It's just a 3/3 or a 4/4 a lot of the time and has, First Strike, Vigilance, and Trample. Like those are good abilities. So I think you don't need to be heavy on allies to make this card good. You just need to be heavy on creatures, but it is much stronger once you can reliably give it First Strike. The other 2 abilities, not quite as relevant, but First Strike's very, very good.
Yeah, totally. I played against the card. I thought it was really solid, too.
Yeah.
It doesn't blow my mind. I mean, it's probably a B.
Yeah, I would say it's a B, especially because an opponent with like a bunch of removal spells, for example, can just make this card not great. And you do always have to watch out. Like when you attack, this is a 4/4 into your opponent's 4/4. And they have a mid-combat removal spell for your other creature. All of a sudden, things get a little ugly. So that is a weakness
for sure. And it does require you to have other creatures on the battlefield, which sometimes is hard to make it good. All right, let's move on to Artifact. I think there's only one. Yeah, there's only one. It's Aligned Hedron Network. It's 4 colorless mana for an artifact at rare. It says, when Aligned Hedron Network enters the battlefield, exile all creatures with power 5 or greater until Aligned Hedron Network leaves the battlefield.
Yeah, and this card, besides its sweet combos with March of the Machines, it is basically a Smite the Monstrous for all the monstrous.
Yes.
So, there are some decks that are actually pretty happy with this card.
Yeah, but it's like more sideboardy, right?
Yeah, this feels like it's closer to a sideboard card. Though, I think if I were playing a deck with like 1 or 0 creatures that die to it, or that get exiled by it,
yeah,
I might just main deck the card.
You might just main deck it and just...
A Sorcery Seed Smite that can sometimes hit 2 creatures, that card's good enough to play. The problem is if you have your own creatures that are vulnerable to this, all of a sudden you're talking about a completely different card.
Yeah.
Then you're talking about like not being able to play this and, having it be a huge cost in your hand, but...
I think, and you alluded to this, I think the key here is that don't be afraid to just cast it to kill one thing, right? I think people see these and they're like, well, I'm just going to wait until it's okay to just kill one thing with your Aligned Hedron Network. And sometimes you get 2 or maybe even 3 and you feel super happy about it. But, if it comes down to it, just use it as a sorcery speed thing to kill their one big thing.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I'm going to give that one sideboard though. All right. So that leaves us with some colorless cards here and then our lands and then we're done. So let's go with Blight Herder, 5 colorless mana for a 4/5 Eldrazi processor at rare. When you cast it, you can process 2 cards from your opponent's exile into their graveyard. And if you do, you get 3 Scions as well. Man, if you can get that off, it is sick, right? 5 colorless mana for a 4/5 and 3 1/1 Scions. That's absurd.
If you can reliably process, this card is incredible.
Yeah.
If you can unreliably process but still have ways to do it, this card's still very good.
It's still very good, yeah.
If you can never process, 5 mana 4/5 is actually a playable card in this format.
Pretty decent.
It's not a great card, but it's a playable one.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say that this card is probably closest to a B, but the high end is much higher than that. If you're already in a deck with like 2 processors and like 2 Mist Intruders and a Benthic Infiltrator, I can't imagine passing this.
Yeah, I'm actually going to give it a B+, and I'm close to A- on it. My reasoning is that it's not just 5 mana 4/5, it's 5 colorless mana 4/5. So any deck that you're going to play in this format can run this card and have a perfectly reasonable 4/5 body, the first time that they can make 5 mana of any color, or colorless. But the upside, of course, like you mentioned, is huge as well. So I'm going to go B+ on Blightherder. I like that guy. Conduit of Ruin. What does this guy do?
Conduit of Ruin is 6 mana for a 5/5 Eldrazi at rare. Okay. When you cast it, you may search your library for a colorless creature card with a mana cost 7 or greater, and then put it on top of your deck.
Okay.
And it says the first creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less. So the natural combo, you go get like an 8-drop with this, and then you get to play it for 6 mana next turn. And
without even having to hit an additional land. Interesting.
What's nice about this card is it's a 6 mana 5/5.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to beat that. And even if you don't have things to get, playing this on turn 6 and on turn 7, getting to play like, a 5 mana creature and a 4 mana creature is pretty nice. I mean, this does add 2 mana when you're playing a creature, which, it's at a stage of the game where it's not insane, but it's still good.
Yeah, and there are going to be the times where you have the 7 or greater colorless Eldrazi or whatever you want to find with it that's kind of your bomb that lets you just cast it for sure. It's funny, we've had a lot of cards like this, Louis, so far that have been like these gravy cards, right? Where like they're pretty good, hell, we just talked about Blightherder. It's the same type of thing where it's like, yeah, I can live with that. But sometimes you just get this absurd upside on it as well. And Conduit of Ruin seems to be the case as well, where, yeah, the times when you get to search up your huge bomb and play it 2 turns earlier after playing a 5/5 for 6, you're going to put yourself in a hugely great position to win the game. And like you described, the times when you don't, you're okay with it. You have a 5/5 for 6 that still, lets you maybe be a bit more mana efficient in the following turn. Conduit of Ruin seems great to me.
Yeah, there is a risk of ruin where you play this, get an 8-drop, then they kill Conduit of Ruin and you can't cast it.
That's true. I mean, I guess you will at some point, though, right?
Yeah, but that's not all that likely because it's hard to kill a 5/5 and you're already at 6. It's not like this is a 2-drop, getting it and putting a card on top of your deck. Yeah. I think Conduit of Ruin is a B. I think it's a good card.
I'm going to give it a B+. I like the upside. Also, one thing to keep in mind is if your opponent has like a Benthic Infiltrator, maybe don't put your best card on top of your library.
If you're about to get ingested, just be aware that you're going to lose the card.
Yeah.
So when you keep giving these cards higher grades, you know that there's this thinking that kind of evaluates cards in their best case scenarios. So sometimes you just have to just be aware that the cards don't always operate in that way. And
what has happened? I'm being lectured on BCSM somehow. Limited resources is completely fallen apart, or at least been turned upside down.
Let's move on to Desolation Twin, which is a 10 mana 10/10 Eldrazi at rare. That when you cast it, you get another 10/10 Eldrazi, also presumably rare.
No, I'm kind of out on this card actually. 10 mana, man. It's just 10 mana. I love the card, but 10 mana.
So we haven't come across an actual 10-drop yet, right? Because we did the commons and uncommons review, and then the biggest those go up to is scanning quickly, like 8.
Yeah.
And in this rare review, we're going to hit a couple 10s and a 9.
Yep.
Once you get up to these mana costs, I think you start approaching build-around territory. I think it's not like Desolation Twin, for example. If let's say you had a normal draft deck, 17 to 18 land draft deck with not much like big accelerator, it's like a red-black deck or something. Mm-hmm. It's an F. You just don't play the card.
Right.
But this is a format that 10 mana spells are sometimes castable, and you can draft the deck where Desolation Twin is a great finisher.
Yeah.
It just so happens that that's a build-around. That's not a card you can just put in your deck. So overall, I think that I'm just going to give Desolation Twin a build-around and say that, hey, if you draft the super ramp Eldrazi deck with lots of ways to make scions and Kozilek's channelers and that sort of thing, then you can cast this card and it can be great.
And it's a reasonable payoff, right? I mean,
it is a good payoff.
Yeah.
20 power and 20 toughness split over 2 creatures. So pretty
Very
hard
strong.
to go wrong.
Yes.
And it even gets around counter spells. When you cast it, you get a 10/10.
Oh, sweet.
So all those things are great if you can get to 10, and there's some decks that can get to 10. So let's just go ahead and call this a build round.
Yeah, I agree. And the way that we'll differentiate is what's the payoff. And I think Desolation Twin does hit the threshold that I need to make it worth it.
Right. Imagine if it was just 10 mana 9/9, no abilities. That would just be an F.
Out of the question.
The payoff there is not good enough.
Totally. Endless One is next. People have been calling this the vanilla test. It's X colorless mana for a 0/0. It's an Eldrazi at rare, and it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it.
So, esteemed mathematician and Hall of Famer Frank Karsten wrote a pretty funny article where he ran the numbers on the new set.
Ooh.
And he had some quibbles with the flavor text that says it embodies all possible meanings of the word infinite. And he had some proofs that demonstrate that is not the case.
Only Frank.
I am not qualified to speak on these things. All I know is I found it very funny. As for the card, Endless One is great. You'll play this in every single deck you draft. And if you need to play it on turn 2, go for it. People are not going to do that as often as they should. I just know that. Don't play it on turn 1. Play this on turn 4 or 5 is pretty much the optimal, though it's nice that if you draw this on turn 10, you can play a 9/9 or 8/8.
Yep, that's exactly the way I'd break down this card as well. It is kind of an interesting study on the vanilla test as well. 1, it's bad. You mentioned 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, it's good. Once you get up to 7 or 8, it starts to fade. It's not that it's terrible. You'll still play it, and you'll just tap out for it, but you can start to look at the other cards around it and see that they've got more upside or give you, more than just power and toughness. But I think that's kind of a neat little case study you can do for Endless One. But I think this card's really solid. I would give it a B or maybe even a B plus. I value flexibility really highly, and this does give us a great amount of flexibility. That said, it is still ultimately just a vanilla creature whenever you do cast it. I'll give it a B plus. Hell with it. I like I love the flexibility.
Yeah, I think it's a B plus. It's not an earth-shattering card at any number, but it is a good card at pretty much any point.
Yeah. Gruesome Slaughter is 6 colorless mana for a sorcery at rare. It says, until end of turn, colorless creatures you control gain tap. This creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature. Yikes.
I mean, the card's very powerful. If you can set this up, this lives up to its name.
Man, setup cost is pretty high.
Oh yeah, it is not low. I have a hard time evaluating this card. I think it's probably a B minus, but I could just see some decks where this is just the best card in your deck.
Yeah, this reminds me of Chandra's Ignition type cards where when they go off they're unbelievable, and when they don't, you never see them. This one requires more.
Chandra's Ignition is just an A.
It did end up being an A, yes. But that was because of the circumstances in the set. And we have to know if that's the case here, too. And I don't yet.
Well, I mean, circumstances aside, Chandra's Ignition required you to have a 3+ power creature. That is it.
But that was because the set was based around small creatures, right?
There are some sets where you would have needed a 4 or 5 power creature.
Yeah, which is a lot harder.
But at base level, one creature was all it took and didn't have to be huge.
Exactly.
Gruesome Slaughter needs a lot of creatures, and they have to be bigger because your 3/3s trade with their 3/3s. I don't want to pay 6 mana to do that.
What do you mean trade?
Oh, sorry, that's not fighting.
No, it's not fighting.
Even better.
It just mows them down. But still, so one of the things that I have noted, I've mentioned it here, is that there are more colorless spells and creatures. You can get a ton of them if you want. I think if you have that deck, then you're gruesome slaughtering, every time. But if you don't, my gut says that if your scenario is you cast gruesome slaughter with one creature out to 1-for-1, that's not good enough. It's just too expensive. Sorcery speed, 6 mana. They can kill your creature in response. There's not enough going on. So I tend to think of this almost like a build around, the deck that has a bunch of, Eldrazi's, Kozilek's channelers and, random devoid creatures probably is going to be able to make this card aptly named, but any other scenario, and it's just asking too much on the setup cost.
Yeah, the fail case of using this for one creature is not a bad fail case, but the fail case
yeah. So here's the thing, right? You need to have the one creature. You need to have the 6 mana. Your creature needs to be untapped. It has to have power equal to or greater than the creature you want to kill's toughness, and it has to not die after you cast Gruesome Slaughter. There's just so much even to get to the base level,
Yeah, but the actual fail case is just not being able to do anything with this.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I don't think I'm in a spot where I would first pick this card right now and try to build around it. But I do think if I was like blue-red or black-red devoid and had a bunch of creatures that worked well with this,
yep,
I would just snap it off.
You would just run it every time. I agree.
That actually feels like a build around. I retract my previous grade. This is just a build around card.
It's a build around,
and when it's one worth going for. When you get there, I think the card is great.
Yeah,
but
it's crazy
too. Gonna happen.
You know, we talk about average case scenario on here, right? We try not to view things in the best case, but we also don't want to view them in the worst. We try to view them in what a regular case scenario is, what we can expect to get out of this on average over the course of many times we play it. But this one is too hard to nail down. I have no idea what the average case actually looks like for this card. All right, so let's give that build around for Gruesome Slaughter and move on to Oblivion Sower. What does this card do?
It's a 6-mana 5/8 Eldrazi at Mythic. When you cast it, target opponent exiles the top 4 cards of their library, and then you put any number of land cards from their exile zone into play under your control.
I'll tell you what, you had me at 6-mana 5/8. I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, 6-mana 5/8 is good.
And the upside's nice. I mean, I don't know. That seems fine.
Yeah, the upside is you're going to get like 1 to 2 lands on average. But if you've exiled other cards, we'll say Mist Intruders or Benthic Infiltrators or whatever, this piggybacks off those as well.
So you get all the lands.
In a dedicated ingest deck, you're frequently going to get 3 or 4 lands if you've done some ingesting. I think this card's very good just because it's a 6-mana 5/8, which, as you said, was fine, and then it ramps you by 2 or 3 lands, which does add up. Also, you can sometimes nab special lands like blighted lands from your opponent too.
Yeah, it just seems really solid. I would give it a B+. Like, I'm not blown away by the 5/8 stats, but I think they're really good for 6. And then you get this upside of just getting a bunch of extra lands to do stuff with. It is coming, kind of what we talked about with that green ramp card. You've already got 6 mana. Maybe this is the ideal thing to sack like 3 or 4 spawns into, and then, to get it out a turn or 2 early, and then you kind of get that mana back to use for real next turn. Anyway, whatever. I think the card's great. I'm going to give it a B+.
Yeah, I agree with that. B+ on Oblivion Sower.
Yeah. Let's see. Ooh. Ulamog. The Ceaseless Hunger. Your cousin yes. from another planet. 10 mana, 10/10. Legendary creature Eldrazi. It's a mythic rare, of course, and you probably know this one by now. He's kind of one of the headliners, but when you cast him, you exile 2 target permanents. He's indestructible, and whenever he attacks, defending player exiles the top 20 cards of his or her library.
So Ulamog is kind of like, I'd say, a better Desolation Twin.
For sure.
Just because I'd rather exile 2 cards than get a 10/10, another 10/10. You already have a 10/10, and plus it's indestructible, so it's not like this 10/10 is really going anywhere.
It also kills them in either 1 or 2 attacks, depending on what turn it is.
That being said, I think Ulamog is in the same category. It's a build around.
Yep.
If you can get to 10 mana, Ulamog's great. And some decks will want to do that. And I actually think Ulamog's worth building around.
I do too.
But am I taking Ulamog over like a Drana's Emissary, the 2/2 flyer that drains them for one every turn? I don't know yet. I can't really answer that question.
Come on, you totally are.
Okay, I'm going to take the Ulamog. But still, do I think that's the best thing to do? I don't know.
Yeah. No, if it was...
I don't know how conducive this format is to playing 10 drops, I think you can play 10 drops. It's clearly a playable card.
Yeah.
There are some decks that are going to be, driven by Ulamog. But how often, when you first pick this card, does it end up in your sideboard? My guess is still a pretty high percentage of the time.
Yeah, I would say 40 to 50% of the time. I mean, you just don't get to throw this guy into anything. Power level wise, I think this card's an A+. I think exiling 2 permanents means that you were behind and now you're not, and it closes out the game incredibly quickly, and it's very difficult to deal with being indestructible and having 10 toughness. So love the card. Payoff is worth it, but you must build around it. You can't just jam this into any random deck. Last of the colorless cards is Void Winnower. It's 9 colorless mana for an Eldrazi. It's an 11/9. Your opponents, and it's weird. It's a mythic rare. It says your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana cost. That includes 0. And your opponents can't block with creatures with an even converted mana costs.
All right, first of all, we're not going to say it.
We're not saying it. That's just off the table.
Second of all, this card is good.
It is good.
It's like Ulamog. It's like Desolation Twin. 9 is just a high enough cost that I'm not casually putting this in my deck. But if you can cast it, it's an 11/9 and it's going to stop some decent percentage of your cards. We did get asked on Twitter, exactly how many cards in this format were of even casting costs, which I think is a kind of unreasonable question just to randomly ask.
It's just absurd.
But I did inform the person that they could just use Gatherer, which I think is a reasonable response. But look, I don't mind being asked questions. Feel free to ask whatever you want. But like a question that I'm not going to know the answer without counting is something that I think anyone could do.
Yes.
Especially myself. But
this is what the internet's for.
That being said, my guess is it's going to be close to 50-50. It might even be slightly higher on even because 1-drops don't tend to be as good as 2-drops.
Uh-huh.
So I would say, if anything, the border, it's going to be, they're going to have slightly more good even spells than odd spells.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think most limited decks play the most is 3, I think. The 3 converted mana cost usually ends up being the highest number of cards in the deck, but whatever. I mean, it's going to blank some percentage of your opponent's cards, call it from 20 to 60% or something of their deck. And it's huge. One major downside to Void Winnower is that it does cost 9, which we've already gone over the trials and tribulations you're going to need to go through to get it on the battlefield. But even more to the point is that they've already had a chance to cast their 6-drop, their 8-drop, all of their 2s, all of their 4s. So, even if they don't know it's coming, while you will blank some number of cards from your opponent, many of them will already be resolved or on the battlefield or whatever. So I don't I would prefer, well, I guess it costs an extra mana, so it's not really fair. Well, what I was going to say, I like the twins better, for example, just 2 10/10s. I think is better than this thing. The not blocking. Now that's the question. I don't really know how.
I would rather have not attacking.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
Who cares about blocking? You've got an 11/9. What are they going to do? They're going to throw creatures in the way at the very worst. Right. So I think that's like somewhat minor upside.
Yeah, I don't love this card. I mean, I want to put it in build around as well, just because it costs 9 mana. I think it's a build around,
but worse than cards like Ulamog or Desolation Twins.
I agree.
think this is one of the cards that you'll play in your ramp decks, but it's not.
Yep.
It's not like a card that I see first pick and I'm like, yeah, I'm going for it.
Yeah, I like it. It's a cool card, but I agree. Lots of great Eldrazi, by the way, in the set. I love that they give us this high bar to reach for. I want to build ramp decks. I want to cast Ulamog, etc. All right, lands, and then we're done. Ally Encampment is a rare land. It taps to add a colorless. It taps to add 1 mana of any color, but you can only spend it to cast ally spells. And if that weren't enough, you can pay a colorless, tap it, and sack it to get an ally back to return target ally you control to its owner's hand. This is
a card that you're clearly not playing in every deck, but is going to be a solid, kind of like freebie in decks where you have a bunch of allies, just because it helps fix your mana and gives you something to do with this land later in the game. It's not mind-blowing, but
it just lets you basically replay one or maybe save one from
save
killed.
One from removal, replay to get the trigger. Yeah, both those things are good. I would always play this in an ally deck, which is a deck with 5 or more allies, probably 6 or more allies.
Yeah,
but I'm not going out of my way to take this card. No, I expect it to wheel most games or most drafts, for example.
Yeah, I would actually give this card a D. It's a card I won't play all the time. I mean, maybe a build around. It just doesn't fit the normal criteria. You'll know if you want it, and you can get it when you want it. All right, now we've got a whole cycle of cards we're just going to cover in one swoop here. Canopy, Vista, Cinderglade. These are the new dual lands. We're calling them the battle lands. They enter the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basics. And of course they are, the actual, forest plains, that type of thing. They have the land types as well. In limited, I do expect that there's a deck that wants to play, we've mentioned it multiple times with Converge, 4, maybe even 5 colors, or at least get splashes going. And these are really handy for that. You're often going to meet the requirement for the basics anyway. You're going to get to play it untapped, and it's just going to be kind of a true dual land. That said, outside of monetary considerations, these aren't normally high picks. Like you just don't, an Evolving Wilds is roughly in the same camp as these things. As far as I can see. But yeah, they're playable. They're good. Like you pick them up when you pick them up. And if you're splashing, you'll be happy you have one.
Yeah, I agree. It's not, these are the kind of cards you'll always play if you're in the colors. You'll definitely like to splash cards with. They're also a kind of free way to converge. Like I would play a blue-black, special land or, Sunken Hollows in like my, green-blue deck if I had converge cards. Cause
oh yeah.
the drawback is just not going to happen very often.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're fine. It's just
fine.
that you just don't normally take them that highly.
No,
like,
you just don't
unless you
take them
need
over playables, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd give them whatever. I don't even know if giving them a grade makes sense because it's not about power. I mean, I guess I'd give them a C- or something like that. Maybe a D. D.
I mean, it's hard to grade these cards. Like,
yeah.
But I always settled on for my written reviews, which was basically give them a 3 and just say, you always play this, but just don't take them over good cards.
Yeah, there you go. Lumbering Falls is a rare land. It's it enters a battlefield tapped. It taps for blue or green, and you can pay 2 blue-green to make it a 3/3 elemental creature with hexproof until end of turn. I've always found these very useful in limited.
Yeah, the lands that turn into creatures are just awesome. They're like when we talked about all the blighted lands last episode.
Mm-hmm.
Lands that do something that you can trade in for a card or cards later. It's just very good because it's kind of like free. It's almost a 2-for-1 because you're just turning a resource which has kind of stopped providing utility into one that is. So Lumbering Falls is something I would probably give a B. I mean, it's a 2-color card. It is a multicolor card, and I wouldn't like splash for it. But if I'm in blue-green, I'm going to take this card reasonably high.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, not taking a spell slot is such a big deal when you're getting that kind of value. I give it a C+ B-, but whatever. I think the card's really sweet. And like you said, if you're in colors or even touching it, you can. Now just remember though that if you are going to try to use it for Converge or whatever, it does make it less likely that you can actually activate it, unless you have another source floating around. So something to keep in mind. Sanctum of Ugin taps to add a colorless mana. It's a land. Whenever you cast a colorless spell with converted mana cost 7 or greater, you can sacrifice it. If you do, search your library for a colorless creature card, reveal it, and put it in your hand and then shuffle. Is this coming up in Limited?
I don't think most decks are going to want Sanctum of Ugin, even decks that have cards that can trigger it, because I think a lot of the ramp decks, first of all, you lose a land, which is real. Second of all, a lot of the ramp decks, I think, bleed into the Converge decks. Just because a lot of the decks that want to play cards like Natural Connection or Lifespring Druid do want to play Converge cards. Yeah. And you just can't play colorless lands in a Converge deck. So I'm going to give this card probably like an F.
I just give it an F. And
just say that like maybe in some decks you'll play this as a way to turn a land into a spell later in the game, but it's not even an extra card. It goes on top of your deck. Oh no, this is the one that goes in your hand.
It does go in your hand, yeah.
But you're still trading a land for it. You're not up a card.
No.
You did trade a land for it, which again is good, but I don't know. I'm not impressed with this card.
I'm not either. I just think it's asking too much to lose a land at that point. Shambling Vent is another one of these lands that could become a creature. It enters the battlefield tapped, but it taps for white or black this time. And if you pay 1 white-black, it becomes a 2/3 with lifelink till end of turn.
A little less impressive than Lumbering Falls.
Agree.
Just because a 2/3 lifelink is just not going to brawl late in the game. You're not really activating these to hopefully like turn 8 or 9. Because you're just hopefully casting spells before then. Mm-hmm. And at that point, a 2/3 is just not as good as a 3/3. So but I'd still think this card's great. It also fixes your mana, so it's probably still just like a B-.
Yeah, I agree. Like, look, we're knocking it because it's not maybe quite as good as Lumbering Falls, or just is lacking a little bit of power. But this is, again, it's all upside. Like, it's fixing your mana, it's giving you Converge, and sometimes it's a 2/3 with lifelink. It doesn't need to be that great to be really good in your deck. Last card
is Shrine of the Forsaken Gods.
Oh, yeah.
Another land. It's rare. Taps for a colorless, or taps for 2 colorless. Spend this mana only to cast colorless spells. Activate this only if you control 7 or more lands. Yeah, I kind of like this one. This, unlike Sanctum of Ugin, this does really help in one of these late-game ramp decks. So, basically, the circumstances for me to play this card is if I have, I would say, 3 or more cards that it helps cast, and and by helps cast, I mean cards that cost like 7 or more. Just because it's not, yes, this can help you cast a 3-drop colorless card, but it doesn't really matter by the time you hit 7 lands. Mm-hmm. So I would say 3 cards that are pretty big, and not playing a bunch of Converge cards like in a 2-color deck.
Yeah, for sure. We were talking about some of those huge Eldrazi, like Ulamog being a build around. Well, this is the type of card that you can include in your deck to help you get up to that level of mana. Yeah. And you should be able to pick them up late, I would assume. I mean, nobody wants this card.
Yeah, right? I don't think anyone wants this. This is a build around. This is one of the cards that maybe you'll play in some of your big ramp decks, but it's not even a guarantee, which means really, I would say 0 to 1 people at the table should want to put this card in their deck.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess that by the time we're done with this format, we will have played this card like 1 or 2 times total. Like, it just isn't going to come together often enough that you want the huge thing and then the shrine is opened and then you get it and, whatever. So I don't think it's like a super important card. But look, if you're trying to cast Ulamog and you're a 2-color deck, go for it. Play Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. All right, that's going to do it. That is it for the Rare and Mythic Rare review here for Battle for Zendikar. A lot of exciting, cool rares in the set. They definitely cooled it off with a lot of the like super quirky stuff that we kind of just shrug at and give an F. There was a lot of really huge bombs in this set and a lot of good answers, a lot of cool stuff. I'm definitely excited to get my hands on doing some more drafts.
I like that there definitely is a range here. That there's the quick beatdown more reminiscent of Zendikar. And there's the big high-end reminiscent of Rise of the Eldrazi, and it'll be interesting to see how those end up balancing out.
Oh, for sure. I can't wait. That is going to do it for this week. I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by channelfireball.com. Make sure you check out Channel Fireball for a slew of awesome free content, podcasts, videos, articles from some of the best players in the world teaching you how to improve at your favorite game, Magic the Gathering. You can also pick up singles, sealed product, all that kind of stuff at Channel Fireball, including this stuff right here, Battle for Zendikar. You can get it at Channel Fireball and order up whatever you need for your decks. Get a booster box maybe so you can get some drafts going with your friends, all that kind of stuff. You can find it there. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can email us if you've got something a little bit longer, lr@lrcast.com, and you can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com. Thank you so much for hanging out. We love the set review time. It's such an exciting time, and we love to share it with you. And we'll talk to you next week.
Well, the one thing the set review time is missing is Crack-A-Pack. And as it turns out, I've got a ton of old packs just kind of lying around my house. Mm-hmm. So I figured we'd do a Crack-A-Pack today.
Ooh. Which one are we doing?
I'm not going to tell you the set because that I think it would be more interesting just to go through the cards. It's an old set. There's some weird cards in here, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. All right.
Ruin the surprise.
Ooh, I get the good Crack-A-Pack smell. Is that the thing you like?
Yeah, it is. And,
right.
and you're opening an old set, so it's like vintage?
Yeah, this set's very old.
I mean, it smells vintage, like it's a vintage... Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, something like that. All right, so the first card is Ashcoat Bear. This is a 1 and a green for a 2/2 with flash.
Okay.
A fine card, but...
That's good.
Yeah, in general, I would not be excited about this card. I mean, it's playable, but it moves a little faster than most bears, but still not all that exciting. The second card is Axebane Stag. This is 6 and a green for a 6/7, which kind of passes the vanilla test, but still, this is just kind of like a big expensive card. So I don't know. I probably would not take that either.
Wait, so we've opened a bear and an elk so far?
I guess so. Yeah, sure.
Interesting. All right.
All right. Well, the third card's also vanilla. This is a Fortress Crab. This is a 3 and a blue for a 1/6. So far, where are you at on these cards? None of these cards are cards we're going to first pick, right? At least we hope not to.
I would take the Axebane Stag.
All right.
Or as we used to say, I would take the Axebane Challenge.
Yes. Next up, we actually have Highland Game. This is 1 and a green for a 2/1, and then when it dies, you gain 2 life. Yeah, the Highland Game's not great. I agree. So yeah, I guess we're not going to take it. Next up, we've got a Golden Bear. So this is actually just worse. I mean, it's not bad. It's 3 and a green for a 4/3. So far, this has actually probably got the best stats that we've seen.
That is the best card. You're right.
But let's continue. Hedron Crab. 1 blue for a 0/2 with landfall. Mill a player for 3. This card has saw a lot of play in Constructed, or at least a decent amount. But I don't know. I'm not as much of a fan of it in Limited. All right.
What's next?
Wetland Sandbar. Well, this is strictly worse than some of the cards in the pack. This is 1 and a blue for a 2/1, so we're clearly not taking this.
All right.
All right. Moving on.
This set's weird.
Yeah, like I said, this is an old set. So, speaking of weird cards, Riptide Crab. This is 1 blue-white for a 1/3 Vigilance, and when it dies, draw a card.
Whoa, that's sweet.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of green cards and some blue cards so far, but this is the first white card. So I don't know if I'd commit to 2 colors right away for this, though it does. I mean, it does at the very least draw you a card. A 1/3 Vigilance isn't horrible, but I assume we're probably not taking this one. Next up, we've got River Bear. This is 3 and a green for a 3/3 Island Walk. So,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad in this metagame either, because it looks like there's going to be at least a decent amount of blue players, but
Yeah.
I'm still not in love with this card. Ooh, this next card's very good, though. King Crab. 4 blue for a 4/5.
Is that a real card?
Yeah, these are all real cards. I'm just opening a pack.
Okay, what is it again?
4 blue for a 4/5. You pay 1 and a blue. Tap it, put target green creature on top of its owner's library.
Oh my god!
This card seems absurd.
In this metagame?
There's tons of cards in this metagame.
What the hell?
But, well, we've gotten to the rare. I think the rare might be the best. This is an old rare from Portal, Razor Claw Bear. It's 2 green for a 5/5 trample, and when it gets blocked, it gets +2/+2. I imagine it's hard to beat the efficiency here.
Yeah, that's pretty tough.
Like 4 mana 5/5 trample that if they block it becomes a 7/7.
I still think I'm taking the X-Bane stag here.
Yeah, I think Razor Claw Bear is the clear winner here. So that was an interesting crack-a-pack. So I might have to find old packs there, and go through them in this manner. But for now, I think we can all agree that Razor Claw Bear is the best card out of this pack.
X-Bane stag.